I'm early. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, January 17th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK. We're brought to you by us. Sign up at Stokastic. You should do that right now if you can. Link in the description. You can come in for $0 as long as you sign up through one of the pick'em sites or sportsbooks that we have listed after you click that link. But before you do that, hit the like button first. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. DK, what's good, man? How you doing?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Had a good day last night, so hopefully we can keep that going. Kind of an ugly 7-game main slate. I was hoping they included the last 2 games, but money to be made, good size contest. So yeah, ready to break it all down.
Yeah, I'm warming up on this slate. We'll see how that ends up by the time we're done talking about it, at least. It's just, there's some ugly value. I don't mind playing it. I'm mad that Wendell Carter, we're going to get into it almost immediately, but I'm mad that Wendell Carter Jr. is getting ownership today, and he didn't last time, and I didn't get what I should have gotten out of that, but that's besides the point. And for anybody that watched the show yesterday in playback, you knew I had a pretty big stand on Domantas Sabonis, and he gave me the business. He certainly did, because he had a hell of a day through 5 minutes of the third quarter. He had 47 fantasy points, I believe. I ended up finishing 18th last night. He was dreadful from that point forward. Had like 4 fantasy points, bunch of fouls, missed shots, basically didn't participate. All he had to do was just be like the average version of himself, and I could have been in pretty good shape. Only one person ahead of me had Sabonis, but he just ghosted me in the fourth quarter.
That's what I was going to ask. So you were only blocked by one person. You could have got second then.
I still had Keegan Murray and DeRozan in that lineup too. So like in theory, I could have got there, but either way, like even if I can get into that top 5 with just a normal performance there, it's the difference. It's $500 to, I don't know, 5,000 potentially.
Right.
So I deserve it for all the shit that I talk about Domantas Sabonis. I feel like he got me right to the edge there and then blue balled me. So maybe I'll be a little bit more kind when I speak about Domantas Sabonis, at least from a fantasy perspective. From a fantasy perspective, you're good, Domantas. You're good.
Yeah. I feel like when you brought him up, well, maybe it was the last show we did. You brought up that he might have like 20 rebounds or something. I think that was when he had like his career low, like rebounds or something. He had like a really
it wasn't a great
day
day
rebounding. Yeah.
It wasn't a great day. And then I also had a decent chunk of Anthony Simons yesterday, who proceeded to score 0 points, which for Anthony Simons, that should be basically impossible.
Yeah, I had him on the late slate. That did not go well.
No. But we're here now, and I don't have to roster Domantas Sabonis today, so maybe I actually have a chance. One can only hope. You ready to break this bad boy down?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go, ladies and gents. How does Chauncey Billups still have a job? I mean, if we're being honest, the Blazers are not trying to win. I also am a little curious if he's a good coach, but it's not like they're trying to be awesome. They're kind of still tanking, trying to figure out what they have. Next year, I think, is a pretty important year for Portland because they're going to have to figure out something with regards to their backcourt. Orlando Magic, 14.5 point dogs in Boston, 213 total. I'd make a joke about this, but Boston seems to treat these games like they're the 14-point underdogs. But we'll see how that works out here today. No Jalen Suggs, no Franz Wagner, who I guess is getting closer and closer to returning, which I hope that happens sooner than later because I really want to see what him and Paolo are going to look like. Goga Bitadze, still in the concussion protocol, so he's out. No Gary Harris, no Jett Howard, no Jalen Suggs. They're missing a bunch, but we are getting ownership to one guy and one guy only, and that is around 25% ownership to Wendell Carter Jr. He's 4,300, center only. Everybody else is either 8 or below, and really only Cole Anthony and John Isaac are getting any sort of love. I'd love to know why Wendell Carter Jr. is getting 25% ownership today and not the 3 that he got 2 days ago. Just makes me irritated, but looks solid at 4,300 if he's just going to be the starting center. But matchup, not the best.
Yeah. So I get why Wendell Carter Jr. is getting the ownership. Last slate, it was actually flipped. It was like Jonathan Isaac getting a lot of the ownership, and then Wendell Carter Jr. was not. And I agree with you. I didn't really think that made sense. Now it's kind of flip flopped. Either way, though, I think both of these centers for the Magic look good. Like they don't really have another big, so you're going to get the 48 minutes split between Carter Jr. and Isaac, and you could even get some overlap. 2 games ago, Isaac did play a little bit alongside Wendell Carter Jr. Played 27 minutes. One positive to note about Wendell Carter Jr. as well is he's basically blowout proof, as weird as that sounds with him starting. He's closed like the last 3 blowouts. So the Magic are usually like more cautious with Isaac's minutes. So this game does get out of hand. Like Wendell Carter Jr. is most likely out there. Like last game against Milwaukee was like they got destroyed, and he played the last like 7 minutes of the fourth quarter. So that is a positive there. He's only 4.3K. Isaac, as we mentioned, is 4K, coming in about a quarter of the ownership. I think both are good options. I don't know if Isaac should be a quarter of the ownership. He does have the minutes he does have the ability to play more. Like 2 games ago, he played, like 27 minutes. So, and he's got the power forward eligibility. So I think my 2 preferred options on Orlando would be the 2 centers in Isaac and in Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah, I think we're basically on the same page here. I have a little bit of Cole Anthony, nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honestly pretty neutral to everything we have here for Orlando. I don't have anybody jumping off the page. Like I think Wendell Carter Jr. is pretty clearly the best option. I think that Cole Anthony and Jonathan Isaac are like very reasonable options to get to if you want to fill out any lineups. Do you have any interest in $8,700 Paolo Banchero, who's only 3% owned? And if this game happens to be mildly competitive, I don't think it's crazy that he plays 32 minutes here and can pay off an $8,700 salary. I have his target score at 51 fantasy points. That's obviously a pretty big number, but that's like 5.9x his salary. Could he do that in 32 minutes? I think he can. 1.6x or 1.6 fantasy points per minute will be pretty lofty, but at some point, I think he's just going to get his starter minutes, and we're not going to know that it's going to happen. Could be today if it's going well.
Yeah, and like now would be the time to take a shot, right? When no one's playing him. I like the call out. Like he was actually on pace to play 31 minutes last game if he would have played the last 5.5 minutes. He had a 44% usage rate in that last game as well. So clearly he's going to be doing everything for this team, getting very little ownership. Boston's been letting bad teams hang around. Not saying it's going to happen here, but it's definitely possible. I think if the Magic keeps getting competitive, like I think, low 30s minutes is definitely in the range of outcomes for Paolo. So I don't mind that shout out at all.
Yeah. I mean, we have we got the $8 today on DraftKings. So we're 40 something thousand entries. More interesting wild card today than you would be on on like the normal day when it's 20K. So I'll have a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy, but I'm going to have a little bit of Paolo. Got to represent my Duke guys.
Do you have interest in anyone else on Orlando? Like any of these, like Anthony Black or KCP or anyone like that?
I usually end up with a little bit of KCP pretty much every slate that I play. If we're talking about, do I have interest in them? No, I don't. They're all just generally such bad per minute guys. Yeah. KCP I have at 0.66, Anthony Black at 0.82, De Silva at 0.7, Trevelyan Queen at 0.7, Caleb Houston at 0.55. Like, it's hard to know who's going to really get the minutes in that group, depending on how it's going. And they're such bad per minute guys that I don't really want to lock in mid-tier Orlando value in the 7 o'clock game in a bad spot.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, for Boston, it's full strength Boston. And that usually leads us to not really getting to these guys. Jason Tatum's 9,900, Jaylen Brown's 8K, KP's 7K, center only. He's also the highest owned guy on Boston at 6%. So to me, it's the same story we tell for Boston every day. You want to play any one of those starters? By all means, put one in a lineup. I don't think it's crazy. Those guys can be in 5 to 10% of stuff, and I wouldn't think it was nuts. But this is a pace down spot. Orlando is still a really good defense. I don't love this matchup for fantasy, and the fact that this is the lone 7 o'clock game, I'd like to have less of it, not more of it.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. Not much I like for Boston. There's a tricky team to target when they're fully healthy. Price points seem about right. I think if I was going to play someone on this team, it would be Kristaps Porzingis. Last 2 games, competitive games, 34, 35 minutes. That's good to see. He's been rebounding the ball at a nice rate as well, averaging about 10 rebounds per game over the last 5 games. So I think a 7K Porzingis is like fine to get to, but there's just not a ton else here. Like the prices on Tatum and Brown feel right. I don't think I'm going to mess with the guards like with White, Pritchard, and Drew. Usually those are guys I'm looking to if like 1 or 2 main guys are out. Like I don't think it's really necessary to get to Horford on the slate either. So one of the more unappealing teams to target, as weird as it sounds, with them being like the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, they just don't look good in this spot. Like it's the lowest total. It's the slowest pace. It's the first game of the night. Everything is against this matchup. And usually when I think that, we get overtime, like the Knicks game from 2 nights ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens here again. But yeah, I'm really just not seeing it here. I've got technically I'm over the field on Jason Tatum. I have 9%. He's 5% owned. I have 8% of Drew Holiday. He's 4% owned. It's like I am getting these guys, but not in any way where I'd be recommending them to people. By the way, unrelated, Drew Holiday's points prop today is 9.5. And I don't have a problem with it. I have him projected for his minutes, and that's about where I'm at. But it's startling to see that be less than 10.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, it's kind of, it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, matchup, he's not exactly soaking up a ton of usage or anything at this point. Just feels weird to slowly see that come down from, the guy that he used to be. By the way, we got an ownership update at 5:09, just in case you have that up on your screen and wanted to refresh. It just came in.
Okay.
All right, let's get away from this game. We've got much better to talk about. This one definitely going to have some talking points. The Minnesota Timberwolves are 5-point dogs in New York, 219 total. Minnesota is without Dante DiVincenzo today, missing his first game of the year with a toe injury. And it's the game of him going back to New York, which I have to imagine pisses him off to the nth degree. I hate it for him. But that is creating some value for us. We've got 30% ownership coming into Nickeil Alexander-Walker, around 20 to former starting point guard Mike Conley. And then we've got 10 to Ant, Randall, Gobert, McDaniels, and Naz Reid. So let's start with, what is your assumption for starter today?
I've been going back and forth on this. It's either Conley or Nickeil. I think it's basically 50-50. Do you have a lean on who it's going to be?
I assume it's Mike Conley.
Okay.
If he wasn't such a vet, I could see it going the other way. But he was the starter for most of the year. It would be pretty weird for the guy that usurped him to go out and then to go to someone else again. Now, if they do, I think that lets us know what Mike Conley is now, and they know that they can't do that. But it just makes sense to me that he gets to start. Whether he closes or not, I think is up for debate. But it makes sense that as the vet, he gets this spot.
Yeah, I like that call.
So what do you want to do with him? Because he's 3,500, point guard only, 22% owned. I expected to have a lot more of him. On first blush, I think I'm going to be either at or slightly below the field. I'm a little nervous about it because he could just as easily go out there and play 31 minutes in this spot. And I don't want to say reclaim it, because he's not going to reclaim it. But, he has been on ice for a little bit. They are on a back-to-back. So they've got the Cavs tomorrow in Minnesota. Does Conley let it rip today and then they sit him? Do they balance it out so he can play them both? The fact that they play tomorrow is messing with my head for this.
Yeah, that's a good point, because they could be a little bit cautious, or they could just say, "Oh, go play 32 minutes. We're going to rest you tomorrow." I think it's one or the other. But yeah, I mean, 3,500, I think it's just a good price point for Conley. So on the season, he is 0.85 fantasy point per minute player. I think you're probably expecting him to play high 20s minutes, upside with a little bit more, I think. So overall, I think he's just a pretty good point per dollar option. Same with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's about a 0.8 fantasy point per minute player on the year. I think you're going to expect similar minutes for him. He's got a little bit better eligibility. He's got shooting guard, small forward, but Like DiVincenzo has been playing really well for this team. So, and he's been playing a lot of minutes. So that's like a lot of minutes to go around. Like DiVincenzo played 39 minutes against Golden State, 36 against Memphis. So yeah, you're going to get a pretty nice bump in minutes here for Conley and for Nikhil. So I think those are your two easiest guys to get to. I would expect that Rob Dillingham enters the rotation. He's the flat min price. Don't really think it's necessary to go to him when you got Conley and Nikhil for just a little bit more. Wanted to mention that. And then the rest of this team, like you're getting around 10% ownership to Nas, McDaniels, and Randall. I think that's all fine. Like you could see, we've seen at times Minnesota run the three big lineup. Is it possible? DiVincenzo out, they run that a little bit, maybe. Anthony Edwards at sub 10% ownership, I think is a bit interesting in tournaments. He's been a lot more aggressive recently. He's had the ball in his hands a lot more as well. So I don't mind him as a contrarian play. But overall, I think Minnesota's a good team to get to with the two value guards, I think, being the top options.
Yeah, but Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Conley are very clearly the easiest guys to click on. The functionality you get from them, the fact that, getting to that value lets you pay up for Giannis, LaMelo, all the Jokic if you want to. We got enough pay up options on the slate that they become a little bit more valuable. I'm just sort of like around the field on all of these guys. I kind of wanted more. It is a bit of a pace down spot for Minnesota. I also wouldn't be surprised if we don't really see one of Dillingham or Josh Minott. It wouldn't shock me at all if one of those guys just gets 22 minutes and the other one gets 4 or 5. That's making me a little bit more nervous. I know everybody wants to play Rob Dillingham. I'd like to see him for sure, but I have no confidence that they want to play him. They clearly don't have him as any sort of priority on this team. And he's still coming back from injury as well. But yeah, if you want value, this appears to be a place where value is really easy to obtain. Which one you want, if not both, is a little bit more up in the air, at least between Conley and Nikhil Alexander-Walker. I agree. I do think Ant looks interesting in this spot. Strikes me as the type of matchup he would get up for in MSG. I feel like he feels that energy in some way. That's not something that I base my play or projections on, but just mentally feels like an Ant spot. We've also got the revenge narrative alert for Julius Randle. I don't know how much weight you put onto that. I put 0 pounds on it, but some people might put some weight on it. And then we get to the Knicks, who are once again waiting on a questionable tag for Karl Anthony Towns. These guys are unowned. 6% to Bridges, 3% to Hart, 5% to Anunoby, 4 to Brunson, 7 to Towns. Assuming they're all in, I kind of feel like they're all just a hair under-owned, like I do pretty much every night. They're always live to play 40 minutes. You never know what Tibbs is going to do. It's a competitive matchup, so it feels like the type of matchup Tibbs would just let these guys go. Do you want to get to any of these guys in bulk if Towns is in? I got the 15% of Josh Hart, which feels awesome after his stupid 49-minute triple-double. Today feels like the day where he packs it in and gets 6, 6, and 6, and I want to die. But what do you like from the Knicks?
I don't think there's a ton that stands out, assuming that everyone's in. Obviously, you're going to get the tight rotation for the Knicks. You're going to get an 8-man rotation with the starters playing the majority of the minutes. But yeah, assuming everyone's in, there's no standout plays. 9.9K Cat would probably be the preferred option. Again, revenge game narrative for those that care. His minutes in competitive games and he avoids foul trouble is usually in the mid to high 30s. So I think Cat, assuming he plays, would be a solid option at 9.9. But there wouldn't be a ton else. Now, things obviously get interesting if he sits again. The center minutes, I think, would be a little bit hard to predict with Jericho Sims and Precious Achiuwa. Against a bigger team like Minnesota, maybe they would lean on Jericho Sims a little bit more. We kind of saw that against the Magic when Sims played a good amount when Cat was out 2 games ago. They lean on Sims a little bit more, played 28 minutes against a matchup like Bataze. Whereas last game of Cat out, it was a little bit more small ball against the 76ers. They went to a bit more Achiuwa, and he closed the game. Now, Achiuwa is the better point per minute guy of the two. So if Cat is out and you think Achiuwa can play mid to high 20s minutes, I think he would be interesting there at 4.3. And then obviously you get a pretty nice bump in usage to Brunson too. On the season, he's a 1.35 fantasy point per minute player with Cat off the court. So this team becomes a lot more interesting if Karl Anthony Towns does not play. If Cat is in, I think they're all kind of just secondary options, with I think Cat being the guy the best there.
Do you have a lean on Towns right now?
I couldn't find anything on Twitter on shoot around. So I think right now I'm 50-50 since he missed last game.
Yeah, I'm in about the same spot. I like to get to him here for sure. Towns, when he's up against it, he usually rises to the occasion, or he will sulk away, depending on how it goes. But I just want to have some of the Knicks. I mean, these starters just play so much that if this matchup's competitive and you get 39 or 40 out of Bridges and Hart and Anunoby and Brunson, like, that's just a place I want to be. I love these guys when they're like 5% owned. I don't seem to ever get them right. The day that I have Hart, it's an Anunoby day. The day that I have Bridges, it's a Hart day. I never get the right wing, but I'm going to have pieces of these guys. But right now it's Hart and Towns for me. And then if Towns is out, I assume we get the Sims, Precious Achua clusterfuck that nobody wants. And you have no idea what Tibbs is going to do. And then Josh Hart plays 47 minutes and 58 seconds. So we got to get the news. And hopefully it comes out early. That would be nice for this matchup in particular. But 7:30 start, only 7:30 game. Worst case scenario, we're not going to have much locked up in Orlando and Boston. Late swap should be pretty easy to handle. John Bush says, I wish they'd start Precious if Cat sits. Yeah, I guess. I never really care. I wish they just played more dudes. I really don't understand why they don't.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure they would start Sims though in the spot against Minnesota if Cat's out.
That just seems to be what they do for reasons I don't totally understand. Like, I can't wrap my head around it.
You remember it was earlier in the season. Achua was out too, and they started Jericho Sims, and then they played Ariel Hukporti like 30 plus minutes off the bench. So they just love starting Jericho Sims.
They just love trolling us.
Yeah,
more than anything else. It's like Tibbs knows there's a DFS industry, and he's like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to totally screw every single person that's doing this stuff. That's how it feels, at least. I just finished off my most recent sim. I really just don't have much of anything here for New York. Like 5 to 10% of all of those main dudes. Kind of similar story for Minnesota. Pretty light on Conley. Pretty light on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I guess I'm just loading up on the late games, which I'm never mad about. Those are the games that I usually want to get to. Schedule for the rest of the day, folks. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. You know the drill. They'll be here from 6 to 7, breaking down all that final news before we get to 7 o'clock. Then we're going to head to Playback. And we'll be on playback.tv/Stokastic. You can come watch the games with us. If you have League Pass, link your account. You'll see the games and us, and we'll just hang out. We'll talk about ownership, late swaps, bets, whatever. If you don't have League Pass, it'll look exactly like it does right now. You'll just see our faces. It'll be me and Greg, and we'll hang out and talk. You won't see the game. Won't affect your experience at all. By the way, this is totally free. So costs you nothing to come hang out and get some later news. Just call it live after lock, really. So the interesting part, though, today is we're going to be a little different on Playback. For the first half hour, and we will hit any news that comes up while this is going on, by the way. So if anything breaks crazy, like Towns out, we will talk through it. Or if like the Minnesota starting lineup is different, we'll talk through it. But we've got a UFC card tomorrow. It has changed a bit over the past couple hours. Main event is going to be a little bit different. But our boy Narco Cop, you can check out his Tails package as well. He's going to be on for the first half hour because the Orlando-Boston game is a national TV game, and we don't have access to national TV games on Playback. So for the first half hour with no game on, we're going to have Narco Cop on to talk about this Saturday's UFC pay-per-view. And then for that final half hour, Greg and I will turn on that Minnesota Knicks game, and we'll watch that one up until 8. So if you're coming in, if you're interested in MMA or just whatever news is coming in on the NBA side, playback.tv/Stokastic is the way to do it. Alrighty. Denver Nuggies. 1-point dogs in Miami, 226 total. We've got some important news to wait on here for the Nugs. Nikola Jokic, questionable. Aaron Gordon, questionable. I tend to think they're both playing, but I don't exactly have the best feel for it. Assuming they're in, 15% ownership coming into Jokic. 12 to Jamal Murray. None to the rest of these guys. How do you feel about paying up for Jokic at 11.9 if he's in, knowing we have Giannis on this slate, we have Shea on this slate, and then just some other assorted 9K guys?
Yeah, I like the ownership right now in Jokic. Sub 12K. and he's only about 15% owned. I feel like he's going under owned right now. So assuming Nikola Jokic plays, I actually like him quite a bit here as a contrarian play. Yeah, he's just a do-it-all guy. He's amazing. I don't think we had to spend a ton of time talking about Jokic, right? He's playing like in competitive games. He's playing 38, 39 minutes. So I think if he plays, he's going a bit under owned right now. There's really not a ton else for Denver that I love, assuming Jokic plays. Jamal Murray at 7K with shooting guard eligibility coming in around 10%. I think is like a fine filler option. You got him and Westbrook kind of manning the backcourt there. I think looking at the salaries, Westbrook coming in about a third of the ownership of Jamal Murray. Maybe Westbrook's on a little under-owned, but again, with Jokic in, I don't think there's a ton here. If Jokic is out, that's where things get really interesting. Because then you're going to have to deal with the value of DeAndre Jordan / Dario Saric. And then obviously the guards look way better. So personally, I'm kind of hoping Jokic plays. I don't really want to mess with the value, but yeah, if he gets rolled out, that's going to flip the whole slate on its head.
Yes, it is. I would really prefer it if he's just in. That would make life way easier. And it's just better life when Jokic is playing. It's better for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if he's not, because the more games that Jokic keeps sitting, the more likely it is that Shai is going to be your MVP of this season. And honestly, it might just not matter at this rate. But Jokic keeps dropping these games, man. He's 6 back of Shai. Well, technically 7 if we count the NBA Cup final, which doesn't show up in any data you'll look at anywhere. It just flies off into the ether like it never happened. But Shai's playing too much, man. It's gonna be hard to run that down. Get Shai as MVP, baby. All right, if Jokic is out, we're just incrementally bumping Murray, Westbrook, Porter, Brown, Watson, Strother, and then the 2 center idiots. If Jokic is out, who is your preferred Denver option? Is it DeAndre Jordan, or does it become Murray or Westbrook?
I think, let me see, looking at the salaries, Jordan's only 3.6K. It might be DeAndre Jordan, assuming he starts. And I think he would probably start in a matchup like this. DeAndre Jordan, I think, is obviously dust as a real life player, but he's still relatively productive for fantasy purposes. On the season, he's a 1 fantasy point per minute player. I think you would probably expect him to play in the low to mid 20s minutes range. So I think DeAndre Jordan would stand out as a pretty good value if Nikola Jokic does not play. He also dealt with a bit of foul trouble last game against Houston, so lost some minutes there. And then obviously the 2 guards I think would be pretty similar plays in Westbrook and in Murray. Westbrook's 1.2 fantasy point per minute player with Jokic at the court. Jamal Murray 1.11. I think Murray would probably play a little bit more. So those 2 would be pretty similar. I think if I was picking between those 2, I would kind of see what ownership was looking like. If one is getting a bit more ownership than the other, I think I would lean towards a lower owned option. And then you would get a scenario where guys like Peyton Watson and Julian Strother would play more. I think they would be consideration. But yeah, I think Jordan would probably be the first guy I'd look to, and then the 2 guards.
Works for me. Now we get to talk about a Miami Heat team that are getting Jimmy Butler back, baby. Now these guys are full stop unowned. 8% total ownership to Miami. They are very clearly the lowest owned team. 3% to Hero. Everybody else below that. I don't mind getting a little Hero or a little Bam in these situations. What I did find interesting, though, Jimmy Butler's points prop today is not exactly representative of someone that's going to be playing a shit ton of minutes. It is currently 14.5. So I would recommend not playing Jimmy Butler. If you do, I would recommend not playing Jimmy Butler. If you think he's going to be spiteful today and just jack up everything and try to rub this in somebody's face, just ladder his points or something, because he still has a salary on DraftKings. But yeah, it doesn't seem like he's going to be getting this full run. I would have thought he was well rested after 7 games off, but apparently not. You playing anything from Miami?
No, yeah, and Jimmy Butler, I think there's just so much uncertainty. The prop market, I don't think they really know what to do either, setting the points prop again a bit low. I like your point there. If you're betting on him, I think alts is probably the way to go. Because if he comes out and gets his normal minutes, obviously 14.5 is too low of a prop. So I think the alts is not a bad shout out there. But yeah, I memean, this team is priced up from when like Jimmy Butler is out. Jimmy Butler's back again. We don't know exactly what the role is going to be. We don't know if he's even going to start. Like we don't know what's going to happen here. But assuming he plays, Jimmy Butler, that is, I think it's pretty hard to get to anyone on Miami.
Yeah, I have like random single shares of like Hero and Bam, and that is basically it. I don't see it, and they're essentially at full strength. So, Hero's always liable to go off. Been playing amazing so far this year, but yeah, Miami is the team that everybody is apparently running away from. Second lowest total on the DraftKings slate, second lowest pace on the DraftKings slate. It's not a great game either. So,
do you think if he doesn't start, there's a chance he just doesn't play?
No, they couldn't do. If they did that, that would get real ugly. He's got to be playing. Yeah. He's got to be playing. That would be great, though. It really would. It really would. All right, let's head to Toronto, Milwaukee. So Raptors, 11.5 point dogs in Milwaukee, 232 total. Toronto, surprisingly, without Emmanuel Quickley today, who feels like he is never going to play regular basketball for the rest of the year. Ochai Agbaji, also questionable. And just of note, Jonathan Mobo is available today. He's been with the G League pretty regularly lately, but is here today. That intrigues me. Kind of makes me feel like Agbaji's not playing, just as like to fill in for that extra body. It also makes me a little nervous about like what's going on with Chris Boucher and or Kelly Olynyk, but we'll figure that out eventually. 13% ownership to Scotty Barnes, 12 to RJ Barrett. Everybody else is in single digits here. How do you feel about Toronto? Because I'm getting a bit of RJ Barrett. I don't mind getting Scotty Barnes. He looks completely reasonable to me, but I don't see much from Toronto that I'm trying to hitch my wagon to.
Yeah, of course, too. I don't know if you saw Davion Mitchell has a huge game the next game, but when we play him at no ownership, he does nothing. So that's just very typical. But yeah, I don't mind this team for tournaments. I think the two top options would be the two spend-ups here in Scotty Barnes and in RJ Barrett. So you take Emmanuel Quickley off the court. That's a lot more ball handling for those two guys. Over the last two games, Scotty Barnes averaging 66.5 passes made, 15 potential assists. So he's going to do a lot more playmaking, as is RJ Barrett. I think that boosts the floor plus ceiling a little bit on both those guys. So assuming this game can stay competitive, I think both those guys should play somewhere in the mid to high 30s minute range. So I like the ceiling on both of them at relatively low ownership. I think if I had to pick between the two, I would go to Scotty Barnes, but I think both are reasonable ways to get different on this slate. Jakob Poeltl coming in at 6.2K is consistently playing that like low to mid 30s minutes in competitive games. He's pretty decent fantasy point per minute player. So reasonable contrarian option. Obviously there's high opportunity costs. There's a lot of good center plays. There's a lot of good cheap centers. So a little bit difficult to get to him, but still playable. Grady Dick coming in at 4.2K, a little bit less than 10% ownership. Don't mind him in tournaments either. If this game does stay competitive, you're probably seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 to 30 minutes from him. Going to get a little more shots up, obviously, quickly out too. So I think he's viable. I think the bench guys are tougher to get to. I like your point with Mobo. I think that does make those guys a bit riskier. Boucher's had some pop-off games, but not really confident in the minutes. Bruce Brown, I don't think it's necessary to go there. Davion Mitchell, if he starts again, I guess, but I think I would just rather get to the Minnesota guards, so a bit cheaper, who I'm just a lot more confident in their roles. So that's basically it for Toronto.
Yeah, it's just they're not that appealing of a team, which isn't surprising for a team that sucks. They're not an appealing team in real life. They're not an appealing team today in DFS. They're all just completely unappealing. But now we get to Milwaukee, and this is just going to be the fact that I don't have Giannis the way that I thought I would today is the really crazy part of it all. So we got news earlier that Andre Jackson is going to be out, so they're not going to be able to get his 14 minutes as a starter today. Heartbreaking turn of events. 30% ownership to Giannis, 10 to Dame, 10 to Middleton, and 10 to Bobby Portis. Everybody else, single digits. I love Giannis today. I think he very clearly looks like the premier pay-up option, power forward center, 11-4. Matchup looks great. I have no problems. And there's a reason that he's getting the ownership that he is. His points prop, when I did my prep like about an hour and a half ago, I believe was 28.5. I want to double check it just in case, because if it starts to move, I'll feel a lot better about it. Okay, it's up to 29.5 now, but still, I've got it at 32.5. I did everything I could to figure out where I was wrong here. I dug through every piece of data, 2-point attempts and his 2-point rate, 3-point attempts and his 3-point rate. I couldn't move it. He averages 32.5 points per 36 minutes on the season, just like matchup agnostic, just for the year. I would argue this is at the very least an average to good matchup for him. So I'm coming in 3 points over that. Now I'm light on him for leverage purposes, but he looks awesome to me. And I like him probably more than the field does.
Yeah, the ownership's there for Giannis, but it should be. I think he stands out as one of the better point per dollar spend-ups. I think in tournaments, I might give the edge to Jokic, about half the ownership right now. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a positive matchup for Giannis. The price has come down a bit. He's 11.4K. So yeah, he looks like a really strong play here. The rest of this team is always tough for me to figure out, I guess, when they're fully healthy. For the likes of like Dame and Middleton and Portis. Chris Middleton only played, 20 minutes last game? There was a blowout, 21 minutes. He played 25 minutes the game before. You're probably in the low to mid 20s minute range for him. 4.9K, I think makes him like a fair option. Bobby Portis is 5.3K. He's usually in the 20 to 25 minute range as well. Another fine filler play. You can get to Dame too. Like he's in play for tournaments. The value, even with Andre Jackson out, like it really doesn't change much. As you mentioned, he's just like Jackson was like kind of like a spot starter. He just wasn't really playing a ton anyway. So I don't really think that does much for the likes of like Taurean Prince, AJ Green, Gary Trent. So relatively easy team to break down. It's Giannis that obviously looks the best. If you want a little bit of exposure to Portis, Middleton, and Dame, I think that's fine. But that's really it for me.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Dame, a little bit of Giannis. I have 10% Giannis right now. I thought I would have 50 when I ran my stuff, just because of how I knew I had him projected, and that's not happening, which makes me think that I'm going to either have an insane amount of Shea or an insane amount of LaMelo Ball, because I don't know where I'm paying up for if I don't have the dude I think is the best option. So on paper, to me, it's Giannis. Portis scares me a little bit. His minutes have been like oddly light lately. So I'm sure today is the day where he just plays 28 out of nowhere. I have a little bit. I don't mind Brook Lopez at 4,800, but he is just not himself anymore. And then all these goons for the rest of Milwaukee are all terrible per minute dudes. Middleton, it breaks my heart that he's not what he was 5 years ago when I started doing these shows, man. I jinxed him more than I jinxed anybody ever in the league. You think it's bad inverse for Sabonis? The moment I hitch my wagon to Chris Middleton, that dude has been in the dumps from that point forward. So apologies for that one, Chris. But I also think you are relatively uneventful coming off the bench here for Milwaukee.
Someone asked in chat if Middleton could play 30 minutes. Would be pretty surprised about that. I think his ceiling right now is probably like 25, 26, unless something weird happens. So, yeah, I would be pretty surprised if he gets to 30.
I mean, if Chris Middleton played 30 minutes today, that would be the second time he's done it this year, and he's coming off the bench. There's no realistic way to say that he could play 30 minutes today. That's like that to me. That's just not on the table unless something bad like there's a spill on the floor and 4 dudes fall in it and leave. It ain't happening. Ain't happening. What is happening though is you guys clicking the link in the description of this video and signing up at Stokastic. It's very easy to do. When you click that link, you land on a page that's going to show this first it's going to show everything you need to do, like sending us an email after you sign up at the sites. And it's going to show you a big list of pick'em sites and sports books. You can see some of them on the screen right now, whether it's Better or Sleeper or Underdog, whether it's BetMGM or Caesars or Bet365, whether you're in a legal sports betting state, a legal pick'em state, potentially both. If you haven't signed up at one of those sites yet, do it through us. Make your deposit at that site for whatever they require. They're going to give you bonus bets or a deposit bonus when you do it. And then you're going to get a free month of our core package for whichever sport you choose, which I assume is NBA. That covers projections, ownership, our boom bust tool, all of our advanced simulation tools, the contest generator, the sims themselves, the single lineup sim. If you're more of like a 1 or 2 lineup guy, you could just build it by hand and then run it against a pool to see how it grades out. Post contest sims, so you can go back and see the decisions you made and the decisions other people made and how they graded out. You get all of this and you pay us nothing for a month. Absolutely zilch. That's the best deal you're going to find, guys. You can get everything that we're talking about and get it all the way up until the All-Star break, essentially. And it won't cost you a dime to us. And I think you'll really enjoy being in behind our paywall. Premium Discord as well. Come in and shoot the shit if you want to. So do all of that by clicking the link, signing up. All of the instructions for what you need to do are the first thing on the page. It's right at the top. It's laid out there for you. Perfect. Utah Jazz are sort of a basketball team. They're 11-point underdogs in New Orleans. 230 total. Jazz are without Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Johnny Juzang, Walker Kessler for rest. Man, they tank like the best of them. Lauri Markkanen out. Michael Potter out. But we do have Colin Sexton for this one. And Oscar, I already forgot how to say it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. 23% ownership to Keontae George. 30 to Bryce Sensabaugh. 30 to Drew Eubanks, who is likely the starting center. Yes, Drew Eubanks is on the Jazz, for those that were unaware. Kyle Filipowski is 20% owned, and then nobody else is getting any love here. Let's start with these guys that are getting the ownership. George, Sensabaugh, Eubanks, and Filipowski. What do you like? What do you not like? Do you just like it all?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you have to have some interest in this team. Drew Eubanks should move into the starting lineup with Walker Kessler out. He's 4.1K, pretty decent fantasy point per minute player on the year. 2 games ago when he started against Brooklyn, he played, 26 minutes in regulation. So I think you're probably expecting, around mid-20s minutes for Drew Eubanks. So I think he stands out as one of the better value centers. We do have other value centers to talk about. But, yeah, I think Eubanks stands out as a pretty good point per dollar option. Keontae George, another guy getting around 20% ownership. I know that there's a gap there in ownership with him and Colin Sexton. Sexton's only 2%. Keontae George is 22%. I feel like that's a little bit interesting. I think, both those guys are probably playing around 30 minutes. So maybe a little bit of interest in Sexton for tournaments as a contrarian play. Keontae George had a big game last game in his first game back for injury, which tilted me. I had an under on his PRA. I thought they would kind of take it easy on his minutes. They didn't. But yeah, so Keontae at 6K, probably playing around 30 minutes with half the team out, I think is a pretty good option there in the mid-range. The other guys getting ownership, Bryce Sensabaugh and Kyle Filipowski. 4.8K for Sensabaugh, maybe going a little bit over-owned, but he's hitting a lot of shots up. Over the last 4 games, 18, 19, 13, 16. Maybe that goes down a little bit with Sexton back, but still he's going to be out there. He's going to be chucking. Kyle Filipowski at 4.2K. Probably coming off the bench, probably playing somewhere around low 20s minutes. I think of the guys getting ownership right now, I think Filipowski probably the guy that is going the most over-owned. And then I don't think I would get to anyone else. Oscar Shibwe, I couldn't even talk there. Oscar Shibwe, Flatman Price. I think he'll play the backup 5. Don't think it's necessary to go to him. Cody Williams, just awful point per minute. Like even in the G League, Cody Williams was only averaging like 14 points, 2 boards, 3 assists, something like that. Like really bad stats in like 30 minutes. So I don't think it's necessary to go to him. Collier, I would assume, shifts to the bench. Like I don't think they're going to run a 3-guard lineup with Sexton, Keontae George, and Collier. So I think it's pretty difficult to get to him as well. He's been playing good, but with him moving to the bench, I think it's kind of hard to go there as well. So sadly, you have to have some interest in this team. I think the top options would be Keontae, Eubanks, and Sensabaugh. Little bit interested in Sexton as a contrarian play, and then I think Filipowski's fine, but going a bit over-owned.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Filipowski take. To me, I'm having a lot of trouble seeing him as a 20% owned guy unless he's playing minutes that I'm not expecting him to play. Like anything could happen for Utah today. If he played 30 minutes, I would not be surprised that he gets more minutes than Drew Eubanks or Oscar Shibwe or any other one of these randos that can show up here. Obviously, Keontae George and Sexton are like normal dudes for this one. So like I can see the path to more minutes, but I don't want to get it if everybody's already doing it. Like if Eubanks is the starter at center, he makes a ton of sense to me. Happy to play that ownership. Sensabaugh is just a good per minute dude. seems to be like a bit of a lightning rod for the team too. So, I have no problem there. I mean, Keontae George is just going to get the minutes. He's their dude. Like he's not getting usurped by any. Patty Mills isn't taking him off the floor. I'm pretty confident there. And then Colin Sexton. He's honestly kind of interesting to me at 2% owned because at least he's like a real NBA player in relationship to most of the other guys he's going to be sharing the court with. He's probably going to have an unfun time trying to get it done with no help whatsoever. But I'd rather get sneaky on Colin Sexton than get a 20% owned Kyle Filipowski. Obviously, slightly different salary tiers. Jazz look good because they're so shorthanded and they have some minutes to go around. But I think the Eubanks, Sensabaugh, George ownership is reasonable. The Filipowski ownership is a little high. I'm okay taking some shots on like Sexton, Cody Williams, or Isaiah Collier just to be a little bit different.
Okay.
And then Oscar Tshiebwe, like to me, is sneaky because all it takes is a rolled ankle or super bad play. He goes out there and has like 6 and 8 in 4 minutes because like it just breaks well. He gets a little bit more at 3K, but man, that is a deep punt.
He fouled out in 18 minutes last game too. Last game they played.
In how many minutes?
18 minutes fouled out.
Oh, okay. That's almost as bad as that UMass one that I talked about yesterday. You see that game?
I did not. No.
People are gonna be mad because I brought this up and talked about it too much on playback. UMass beat Fordham 120-118 in 3 overtimes, like 2 nights ago. 1, 2, 3, 4 dudes from UMass fouled out. 5 guys from Fordham fouled out, and one of the guys from UMass that fouled out did it in 9 minutes.
That's got to be one of the fastest foul outs ever. Well, I guess in college that's 5 fouls, but still, that's insane.
They played 13 guys. You want the craziest part of all of it?
Mm-hmm.
They shot 122 free throws.
That's wild, yeah.
Can you imagine watching that game? How awful of an experience that had to be?
I wonder how long that game took. Like probably like 3 hours?
I don't know for sure. And I'm pretty sure somebody in chat will definitely be able to tell me. I repeated this because I thought I saw it, but I don't know it for sure. I'm pretty sure whoever the best dude is from UMass threw up on the floor at some point.
I mean,
That's
yeah,
nuts.
I would probably too if I played like 50 minutes.
Yeah. It's Rashul Diggins played 49 minutes. That was the most of anybody. Somebody else played 48. It's just wild game. But yeah, I don't know. Speaking of foul outs, that happened. All right, Pelicans side. We got our news earlier today. Yves Missi going to be out for this one. So let's just start with this one. Who are you assuming starts at center today?
I think Daniel Tice. But I also think that JRE starting is in the range of outcomes too. Tice has been playing the backup 5 with Missi out, so that's why I lean Tice. But I could see it being JRE too.
Yeah, I don't have a great feel for which one it is. Tice is 3,100. JRE is 3,100. They both have center eligibility. JRE has power forward eligibility. I think it's easier to just assume it's Tice. And if it ends up being JRE, you can naturally swap those guys. If you assume it's JRE and you put him in a bunch at power forward, it complicates a little bit what you're trying to do if he's stuck in that power forward spot. But so my recommendation would be assume it's Tice and try and get him in a center spot. If that's what you're doing, it will make your life easier. 15% ownership to DeJounte Murray, 12 to Daniel Tice. Everybody else is in single digits. I'm getting a bit of this one. I got 20 of the fat man, Zion Williamson. I got 13 of CJ. I've got some shares of Tice, obviously. Got a bit of Trey Murphy. I got a little bit more of the New Orleans Pelicans than I was expecting because they get to play the Jazz.
Yeah, it's a good spot for sure. I think that assuming Daniel Tice starts, I think he's going a little bit underowned right now. I think that Drew Eubanks on the opposite side would be still a better point per dollar option. But I mean, Tice is basically the flat min price on the season. He's about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute player. I think if he starts, you're probably expecting 20 to 25 minutes. So I think he's a reasonable option to get to there. Not getting a ton of ownership. Let's see. So DeJounte is the only other guy above 10% right now. He's 8.2K. Honestly, maybe going a little bit over owned right now. I think you can't play DeJounte Murray. With Zion back, though, you're going to get a bit more playmaking there for Zion, a little bit less for DeJounte. The minutes on Zion were a little bit weird last game. Like he only played 24 minutes. The previous 2 games, he played 28. If you get Zion, if you told me Zion's, playing high 20s minutes, I would have a lot more interest. But, only playing 24 minutes last game was definitely a bit concerning. But he's not getting a ton of ownership. So I think he's someone that you can definitely take a shot on in tournaments and hope that you get kind of that higher end of the minutes range. Looking at the rest of this team, probably not going to get to the likes of like CJ or Trey Murphy. And then not much else. Like Jeremiah Robinson Earl right now getting no ownership. Obviously that would change if he starts. My assumption is he'll play some minutes at the 5. I also think you could get some Zion at the 5 as well, some small ball, which I think boosts the floor plus ceiling a little bit there for Zion as well. So definitely keep an eye on that starting lineup. I think if it's JRE, I would like it a lot more just as the eligibility. If it's Tice though, it's still fine because again, I think you're probably going to get somewhere in the 20 to 25 minute range.
Yeah, you would think Zion at the 5 should be able to be useful against a Utah team running out Kyle Filipowski, Oscar Tshiebwe, and Drew Eubanks at the 5. I think Zion can handle that matchup at least a little bit. I mean, he's a tank. Anyway, oh my God, we're on game 5 and it's 5:52. I'm doing terrible at managing.
I was honestly about to mention. I'm like, oh, we got to go faster.
Well, there are some spots that don't require a ton of conversation.
For sure.
Hornets and Bulls. Hornets are 5-point dogs in Chicago, 236 total. We got 25% ownership coming into LaMelo, a little over 20 to Miles Bridges, and about 15 to everybody's hero from a couple days ago, Mark Williams. We're waiting on Q tags for Moussa Diabate and Brandon Miller. I like LaMelo here. Certainly worth the ownership. Miles Bridges has been playing a little bit more. I think he looks fine in this spot. It's a great matchup for pace. It's a great matchup for defensive purposes. I'm a little light on Mark Williams. I think he's getting a little bit too much juice, but I wouldn't mind having him, and I have a little bit. What do you like for the Hornets?
Yeah, so start with Mark Williams. I was surprised how many minutes he played last game. He played 36 minutes. Honestly, I thought he would play similar even with Nick Richards out. That was not the case. They gave him a lot more run. If he gets similar minutes again, I have some interest in him. He's getting ownership. He's a 1.42 fantasy point per minute player. So, if you give him 35 minutes here, it's going to look good. So, coming around 15% ownership, definitely have some interest there in Mark Williams. Looking at the spend ups, LaMelo, Bridges, both around 20%. I'm a bit higher in LaMelo, I think, right now than the field, 10.4K. The minutes have been very solid, 39, 40 minutes over the last couple of games. So, the first couple of games back from injury, they kind of eased him back in, but now they've kind of unleashed him. So, on the season, he is a 1.5 fantasy point per minute player. Great spot, up tempo against the Bulls. So I'm pretty high in LaMelo here. I'm hoping Brandon Miller plays. I really don't want to deal with the value here for Charlotte with the likes of like Martin, Green, Salon, guys like that. So I'm really hoping that Miller plays. We don't have to deal with that. And if Miller does play, there's really nothing else for me to look at for Charlotte.
For Chicago, these guys are pretty easy to talk about today. Talen Horton-Tucker is questionable if anybody cares, but everybody else is just available. And we're not getting much ownership. 10 to Kobe White, 5 to Levine, Vooch, and Giddey. And that makes sense to me. I've got like 10% of Levine, 10% of Vooch, 10% of Kobe White, a little bit under that on Giddey. Nobody jumping out for me, but 5% Levine against Charlotte seems like a decent contrarian option.
Yeah, I think this team is like filler plays when they're fully healthy. Nothing really standing out looking at the price points. So if you want to get to like any of the main guys in Vooch, Levine, Giddey, Kobe White, I think that's fine. Like Levine's been getting a ton of shots up recently. Besides last game, 22, 24, 21, 20, 25 shots. So yeah, he's low owned, decent spot here against Charlotte. So yeah, I think like any of those main guys are fine options. I don't really think I'm looking at the value. Maybe if we had a slate where we're lacking a lot of value, like guys like Jalen Smith, who's a good fantasy point per minute player, or Lonzo Ball, I think would be a bit more interesting. But we do have a good amount of value and maybe possibly more opening up depending on what happens with news. So this is just a team with like last piece in guys.
Here's the team you want. Oklahoma City Thunder, fresh off a waxing of the Cleveland Cavaliers, are 8-point favorites in Dallas. They 224 total, and OKC is just running it back with everybody that was available from yesterday. 35% ownership to Shea, 20 to Jalen Williams without the Y, 10 to Cason Wallace, 20 to Dort, 20 to Joe, 10 to Jalen Williams with a Y. I am happy to get basically anything from OKC. I'll take some shares of Aaron Wiggins. I'll even take some shares of Kenrich Williams. But Shea looks awesome in this spot. I think Dort's value looks great. I have no problem having Jalen Williams without the Y. I'm happy to have anything that I can get from Oklahoma City. These guys look fantastic.
Yeah, the team looks good. They're getting a lot of ownership right now. SGA getting the most ownership of anyone on the slate. Makes sense, 10.2K. He looks good. Jalen Williams with a Y was very chalky last night. Definitely underwhelmed, gotten a bit of foul trouble, and then he's never came back because of the blowout. If he starts again, though, I think he's kind of interesting because I think you would probably expect him to play around 20 minutes or so. He's a decent fantasy point per minute player as well. So, yeah, Jalen Williams with a Y, I think I have a little more interest in him, assuming that he starts. They don't have to start him, though. They could go small. But yeah, J-Dub, the Ford coming in around 20% ownership. I think that's totally fine. Value options with Joe, Casey Wallace, and Dort, I think are guys you can mix in. Nothing I feel amazing about, but those are guys that, are a reasonable point per dollar option. So yeah, pretty good team to target overall.
Almost made. Josh likes Dort. Never would have guessed. He's 23% owned, man. He's the second most owned guy on the team. It's not like I'm just conjuring up Lou Dort today. What do you want me to do? He's the second most owned dude. And it makes sense. But yeah, no, this is the team to get to. They're the most owned team on the slate. They're one of only 2 teams that are over 100% ownership. Nope, sorry, it's 3. Minnesota snuck over. They weren't earlier today. Utah is below them as well. But look, they're shorthanded right now. No Hartenstein, who's a better option than Chet, or is a better option than Cat if you want to win a title. Shout out to Chat. Chet out. AJ Mitchell out. So they're a little thin right now. Now in Dallas, we might be getting Kyrie Irving back. He doesn't look great at 9,300. Only guy getting love. 20% owned Daniel Gafford, which is basically the same ownership as Wendell Carter Jr. Ooh, frustrating. Sure, I won't smash now though. 10, but that's it. 2% to PJ, 4% to Marshall, 2% to Clay. Do you want anything from Dallas here?
Gafford's really the only guy right now. With Derek Lively out, he's going to start. His minutes go up. He's a pretty good fantasy point per minute player. On the year, 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I think you're probably expecting somewhere in the 25 to 28 minute range. Last game, he played 30 minutes. I think that's definitely on the high end, but it's possible. So, yeah, I think Gafford is your top option. Backup center will probably be a combination with Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber. Don't think it's necessary to go there. Assuming Kyrie plays, there's nothing else. If Kyrie misses, I think Dinwiddie and Hardy become playable. Dinwiddie would start at the point, would have the ball in his hands a lot more. And then Hardy, I think, would be a playable option off the bench. But assuming Kyrie's in, it's really just Gafford, and that's it.
That concludes the DraftKings specific portion of the show. These next 2 games, not on the DraftKings slate. And hit that like button, by the way. We're getting into Live Before Lock a little bit later than I would have wanted to. So apologies to the Live Before Lock crew. Ja Morant is questionable for Memphis today. They're 2.5-point favorites in San Antonio, 238 total. Jackson, Bane, Morant. They're all 15% owned. No one else is owned for Memphis. That is exactly how it should be. I don't have a preference between the 3 of those guys, but those are the 3 guys you should roster, and you should not roster anybody else from the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I agree there. Ja questionable, but went through shoot around, so I'm expecting him to play. The minutes have ticked up on him and Bane recently, so that's good to see. Yeah, I think any of those 3 guys are fine. I'm not going to mess with any of the Valley here for Memphis. I think if I had to pick between the 3 top options, it would be Ja Morant. 37, 31 minutes of last couple games. So yeah, I think you can get to any of those guys, but I'm not going to mess with the value at all.
You want anything if Ja's out?
If Ja's out, yeah, that would be more interesting. I think Pippen would probably start there. He would, let's see, what's the price there on FanDuel? So on FanDuel, it's 5.3. On DraftKings, on the late slate, to be more interesting. Still think he would be in play, but obviously Bane and Jaren Jackson would look a little bit better. Then I think you would get a bit more run for a guy like Luke Kennard as well. 4.5K over there on FanDuel, I think would be viable as a contrarian play.
Spurs are the team that everybody's getting to on FanDuel. 35% ownership to Wemby at 12K, 20 to Vassell, 40 to my boy Stephon Castle, who I don't know why I'm co-opting now because I don't think he has any offensive ability. 10% to the Barnacle of the Bay, close to 20 on Chris Paul and around 15 on Keldon Johnson. It's not the most fun matchup in the world, but 4.7 possessions above their average. Massive pace up spot for San Antonio. And that is why everybody is getting to the Spurs. So sign me up for Wemby, sign me up for Castle, but I'll fill out with the rest of these guys as well.
Yep. Last couple games with Jeremy Sohan out, 36, 32 minutes there for Stephon Castle, 16 and 21 shot attempts, Totally understand why he's getting ownership. I think he stands out as a good value. You should get a bit more run for guys like Keldon Johnson and Champagny as well for the Spurs with Jeremy Sohan out. Those guys not getting as much ownership. I think they're reasonable contrarian plays. You mentioned Wemby coming in at 12K, around 30%. Over there on FanDuel, blocks and steals worth 3, so a little bit more valuable there. Can't go wrong with Wemby. Devin Vassell, really the only other guy to mention. I guess Chris Paul too, I think is fine. Devin Vassell, 6.7K. Minutes have been very solid for him. In a competitive game, you're probably looking at 34 to 35 minutes. Another reasonable option in the mid-range. But overall, I think it's a pretty good team to target.
The final game of the night, the Brooklyn Nets, 11-point dogs in LA, taking on the Lakers. No Max Lewis, Melton, Thomas, Watford. Cam Johnson, questionable. There is zero ownership coming into Brooklyn. They're the lowest owned team there. Your guess is as good as mine. Who plays, who starts, what minutes go to anybody? Does anybody play 30 minutes? Probably not. It's just a sea of garbage. I don't know how you choose somebody from the Nets.
It really is. This team's been tilting me a lot. D'Lo, I think, is more playable on DraftKings. You're playing the late slate at 5.6K. On FanDuel, I think it's really hard to get to him over there at 7.3K. This team's probably going to play 10, maybe even 11 guys. They're going to spread it out. No one's playing a lot of minutes right now. Looking at the price points here, it's basically a cross-off for Brooklyn.
And the Lakers are the same team they always are. No Dorian Finney-Smith, which makes Rui Hachimura look a little bit better. A little over 10% ownership to Reeves, a little under 10% ownership. Mike Conley will start. A little under 10% ownership to AD, 15 to LeBron, 15 to Rui, 10 to Max Christie. I don't have a lot of separation between those starters. I think they're all basically like 10 to 15% guys. I wouldn't take a soul off of the Lakers bench, but in this spot against Brooklyn, I think any one of the starters are reasonable to have in a lineup.
Yep, agree with you with the bench. I have no interest in anyone off the bench. Figured that Rui Hachimura would get a minutes bump with Dorian Finney-Smith out last game. Dorian Finney-Smith out once again, and he did. Rui Hachimura played 33 minutes. I think you're probably expecting around 30 minutes from Rui. Looking at the FanDuel price point, 4.8K, again, solid option there. The spend ups, AD at 11.4. Honestly, maybe going a little bit under-owned. Wemby is 5x the ownership of AD over there on FanDuel. So I think AD is a bit interesting there at relatively low ownership. Reeves, Christie, LeBron, all hovering around 10%. With D'Lo shipped out, you just add more ball handling for Reeves and LeBron. Those are really the only two playmakers right now for this team. I think those guys around 10% feels about right. Christie should play around 30 minutes in competitive game too. So not really much else to add there. And then, there's just no way I'm looking at anyone on the bench for the Lakers. They're giving the starters a lot of run and the bench just sucks.
Tell the people where to find you, DK.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, DK __ DFS, or on YouTube, DK DFS.
There it is, everybody. We got it done. We had to step on the gas a little bit down the stretch, but we got it done. NBA Live Before Lock coming up, not just next, but immediately. These guys are already here. Hi, Greg. Hi, Eric. There's one. There's two. What's up, boys?
Yeah, so some programming notes because, actually a few things to hit on. So Josh and I, we're going to be on playback in an hour. Did you talk about the playback show at all, by the way, Josh?
Damn right. I'm a company man, baby. Shout out Narco Cup.
Yeah, so we've got the slate for tonight. And of course, we're still going to be covering all the NBA breaking news as it happens. But also, there's only one game locking at 7, and it's an ESPN game. So we're not all going to be able to watch it together. So we're going to have Narco Cop come on. He's going to talk about the MMA slate with us for 30 minutes before we put the NBA games on. And then in addition to that, we'll be talking about, the basketball, like I said, the late slate stuff. And then after Narco Cop is done with us, we got the 7:30 game that's going to be tipping off Knicks Timberwolves. I'm pretty sure that's 7:30 game. We'll throw that on screen. And then the 8 o'clock is when a bunch of the games lock. So we should have a bunch of late news that's coming up until that spot. So hopefully this is a way that we could kind of format the show to give you guys more interesting content that's relevant throughout the entire thing. Something new. We'll see how it goes. If you guys like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know that too. It's always useful to get your guys' feedback. And one other thing also. Tomorrow, this doesn't even apply to Josh, you or DK. Tomorrow, NFL main slate. We're doing the flagship NFL show. Move from Sunday to Saturday because the 4-game Saturday DK slate locks on all 4 games covering. So big slate is locking on Saturday as opposed to Sunday this week. So that's when the big show is going to be. Those are all the programming notes you guys need.
Greg and myself, no weird chemistry there with Mr. Matt Gajeski, who sometimes wants to kill me, depending on the given Sunday.
Yeah, he did strongly request to not do the show with you tomorrow. So it is going to be me with you. That's how it's going to be.
So they have the bigger size contest Saturday, right, for the 4-gamer instead of like the 2-gamers.
Yeah, and then FanDuel did something super weird where they don't have any big contests. They did the 2-game slate Saturday, 2-game slate Sunday, and they did the 4 games Saturday to Sunday, and just didn't make any of the contests big.
Well, that feels like a mistake on their part.
Losers.
So there we have it. Josh, DK, have a good night. Good luck with your lineups.
Yep,
Josh, I'll see you back here in 54 minutes.
Adios.
All right, Eric. So are you in playback yet, by the way?
No.
All right, go ahead and jump.
You could have done that during your entire monologue there.
Yeah, I gave you plenty of time. You had a lot of runway. Wasn't enough time for you to get that. You got your TV working behind you today. So listen,
sure do.
Incremental upgrades. You guys do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got a big NBA slate for you guys here today with a lot of players on the injury report, and not a great night for the revenge narrative people, perhaps, Eric, because in the 7:30 game, Dante DiVincenzo is out taking on his former team in the New York Knicks. Mike Conley starting his place. And he got Karl-Anthony Towns' questionable game-time decision dealing with the thumb injury. So you could certainly get a scenario here where two players, revenge spot, going against each other and don't play against their former teams. Other players who are on the injury report. And this is going to be across all games throughout the night. The later games are only included on the FanDuel slate, but the DraftKings slate, including the first 7 games, we have Nikola Jokic is questionable. Just touched on Cat. He's questionable. John Morant is questionable tonight. Kyrie Irving is questionable. Brandon Miller is questionable. Cam Johnson is questionable in that late game. Aaron Gordon is questionable. We've got Ochai Agbaji questionable. And those are really the Agbaji kind of not quite important. So that's where we'll draw the cutoff of guys who are really important. Eric, what news are you eyeing that you think is going to impact your lineups the most? Is there anything you have a particular lean on how you think something will go?
Yeah, I'm not playing FanDuel tonight, so that's kind of helpful. I think Kyrie, Brandon Miller, like we've got a couple of them that kind of exist where, oh God, Roki Sasaki is signing with the Dodgers. I've been waiting for this all year. I mean, how good are the Dodgers? This is an absolute joke. This is actually a joke.
Yeah, I mean, so they have a ton of pitchers that have injury issues, but they've got like 7.
Well, they got rid of Bueller. He's now a Red Sox, so they don't have to think about that headache anymore. Sasaki's a freak. Oh my God. They're going to be so dumb. They got Blake Snell this year. They got Blake Snell.
Are they going to be like minus? Are they going to be? They're going to
minus
be
110
like
or something
to win the World Series.
I mean, it's getting dumb, and we're talking about like. I mean, we've never seen anything this good, period, ever. We've never seen a team this good.
Coach DFS pick says they still won't win 100 games. Their over-under for win total is going to be like 110 or something.
Yeah, it's going to be like 105, 106, if I had to guess.
Yeah. I mean, he's arguably the best pitching prospect ever come out of Japan. Does have injury risk, but he's insane.
He throws at 102, and then he has off-speed stuff that literally looks like it falls out of the sky, like it hit a bird, Randy Johnson style. Holy crap.
Coach DFS picks. Yeah, if you want to do a gentleman bet on whether the Dodgers win 100 games or not, DM me on Twitter. I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I'll take it too. Just hit me up. I'm more than happy.
You're about to get a lot of people hitting you up on that one. But
yeah, you want to make that a 50-50 proposition? I'm happy to. I'm more than happy to.
Don't want to belabor this too much. We do have the NBA slate to talk about here. And yeah, so right off the bat here, we've got this Orlando-Boston game that's in the 7 p.m. start time. So the first thing I want to ask you, Eric, because this is going to be really important for how we construct our lineups. And then, of course, we'll go through everything as news breaks and answering your guys' questions. Is there anything we need to be playing from the Orlando-Boston game?
No.
That's how I feel as well. I'm sure that I'm not taking it out of my player pool or anything like that, but there's nobody who really prominently is, well, actually, I should take that back. Wendell Carter Jr. is somebody who I like a good amount, but I wouldn't consider him a must play.
Yeah, he's the only piece pulling any ownership. I mean, if we have producer Jacob, let's take us out of this and let's throw us onto a little tiny 2 screen and pull up the projections. I think because this locks 50 minutes from now, it's the only game that I'm really paying attention to all that much because I'll be able to build everything out here. I've got 20% Wendell Carter Jr. I have 4% Jason Tatum. I have 2% Drew Holiday, and I have nothing else. The only guy that you're really looking at from this early window of games is Wendell Carter there, 4,300, the only one. I mean, even this other game that we have, Minnesota, New York, I'm not sure what you think. I mean, Mike Conley is definitely priority. Nickeil Alexander, definitely priority. I mean, we're going to get the Karl Anthony Towns news, and we're going to know whether there's anything crazy viable. We're starting to see prices come up for all the Knicks here as well. So, like, I don't know, outside of the value pieces, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, and then Wendell Carter Jr., it's like 3 players that I'm really actually playing from these first 2 games. And then we just have this slew, this entire just bang, bang, 4 games at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. That's really what I'm going to be paying attention the most to. But otherwise, it's basically those 3 players right now, pending what happens with Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, and I'm looking through my exposures right now. And yeah, Wendell Carter Jr., I get to in lineups. He's somebody, once again, I wouldn't consider a must play, but he's somebody who I don't want to fade, right? He's somebody who I'm not willing to fade from that game. Outside of that, though, I don't have any. Who's my next most rostered player from that game? It is
like even Naz. I have 0 Naz Reid right now, which is weird at 4,900. But like, I do think one of the weird push and pull effects of having no Dante DiVincenzo there is I do feel better about Julius Randle's minutes. But like, it's 7,100, and if Cat is out, I'm probably going to get to lots of this game overall, and I'll probably get to more of just about everything. But I think Randle, I kind of prefer. Like right now, I have 0 Randle. I don't know what I think about that because I think he's like, somebody tagged us on Twitter, like nuke of the night potential. I did think he was interesting. I put him in for like 20 plus as a lean yesterday on the betting video because I'm like, well, Julius Randle might go out and chuck it and Dante DiVincenzo out. Maybe they need a little bit more offense. Maybe that is Naz Reid at 4,900 where he gets more secure minutes. But I kind of like just waiting for that 8 p.m. Eastern time window of games, 4 of them starting at the same time there and just kind of making that the basis of my night.
Yeah, and I'm looking through my lineups. The player I have the second most exposure to in the Boston-Orlando game right now, outside of Wendell Carter Jr., he's number 1. He's the only one who like really matters to me. I have 3% of Jason Tatum.
Yep, that's the same thing for me. 4% is what I had.
And I saw a couple people in chat bringing up Paulo Banchero. Once again, $8,700 on DraftKings. If you had a lineup or 2 with Banchero, I don't think it's the end of the world. I'm not going out of my way to make sure he's in 0% of lineups or anything like that. But he's locking the first game of the night. This game is massive blowout risk. And then you're also in a spot here where you're in about as hard of a matchup as possible going up against the Boston Celtics. Plus, he's on a minutes restriction. His price tag is going to be more expensive than what it currently is going forward. But it was confirmed earlier in the day that he's going to remain on that minutes restriction. And you know that with the way that he's coming back from the injury, if they are down by what the spread is at the end of the fourth quarter, he's just not going to be playing those minutes. So it's really hard to expect a full allotment of minutes from him. And the other thing, too, is if you look at his game log since coming back, it kind of paints how the ceiling is capped for him on this minutes restriction. He's played really well to the point where Eric sent me a text message. I'm sure Eric remembers that. What'd you say? Paulo Banchero is the 3rd best player in the NBA or 4th best?
I was obviously being a little sarcastic. I was watching the game and, you know, he's a Dookie too. So that's a little bit baked in. As you can see, there's a Duke basketball right behind me signed by the entire 2001 national championship team. So yeah, I grew up a Duke fan, love my Dukies, but Paulo Banchero, man, there's times where he just turns it on and it's kind of over. He did it alongside Franz Wagner. I mean, we have not seen this Orlando team healthy other than like the first 3 games of the season. And I'm kind of excited to see him come back to fruition. I do think they're the most interesting team to bet. I almost pulled the trigger on them in Arizona. You know, I don't do a ton of future stuff, but was looking at the board and I'm like, man, Orlando getting Franz Wagner back, Jalen Suggs out right now. They're going to be interesting. They're going to be really, really interesting, but I don't think Paulo Banchero right now. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
So here's what his numbers look like since coming back, and on a per minute rate, you know, they're pretty crazy. He has his 3 games. He has a 46, a 31, and a 46% usage rate, and overall that has amounted to him averaging 41 fantasy points. And now you're putting him in the hardest match he's been in since coming back. And then also you look at like the real ceiling game. There was no way he could have played better than he did his first game back. Impossible. No way. And he only scored 54 fantasy points, which probably isn't enough for this slate. So it's really hard for me to realistically see Paolo Banchero as somebody who'll want to build around. Once again, last man in, if you've got $8,700 left that he's in a lineup or two, that's acceptable. Just not somebody I want to be prioritizing.
I will throw this out there. I mean, if the game stays competitive, he played 26 minutes against Milwaukee, none of those in the fourth because they were just getting completely blitzkrieged. So there is like 32 minute upside, but even at 8,700 with that in mind against Boston, if you had to play one to save your soul, Paolo Banchero or Zion Williamson?
For this slate?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you just meant like in general, the two basketball players. Zion.
I would take Zion too. And I mean, part of it is the tiebreaker of it being the evening window of games, but at the same time, Paolo Banchero at 42.5, sweet, sounds great. Like Zion Williamson, it has all the upside in all the land, baked in. I mean, we just saw that against Chicago here too. And the spot with power forward center just looks so much more appealing to me at like half a fantasy point less than Paolo Banchero. I mean, I really don't even think it's remotely close. I'd want to go to Zion.
Yeah, Zion for me as well. Projects better. Price tag about the same. Zion $100 cheaper. It's negligible though. But I mean, the biggest part to me, more than anything, is just what you said. He's in the later.
Paolo played 7 minutes in the fourth quarter there. Great. Then they kind of kept him around that same 27 minutes level. And I feel even better about the fact that I'm going towards Zion Williamson. So yeah, I think Zion has the better opportunity cost here. I must have been looking at the wrong thing. Popcorn machine, where did you go? Where'd you go? I miss you so. It seems like it's been forever since you've been gone. There you go. Yeah, 6.5 minutes there in the fourth quarter.
Super chat from our friend Malukar. Malukar is asking us all right, so this is a 2v2 question with a bit of a caveat to it. On one side, he's asking us D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns or SGA. So Russell/Towns or SGA. And the other one is Ware and Williams for a $10 single entry. I can't say I really love either of those combinations. I assume this has to be a FanDuel lineup because it's got D'Lo in it.
This is a Khalil Ware fan account over here. And I would not play a single lineup with Khalil Ware on FanDuel today. Like the whole
I don't
premise
like either of those. I don't like either of those 2v2 combinations. I guess I'll say Russell and SGA, but I don't even understand how you're doing a swap. Whatever. I don't like either of them, Alucard. I'll answer Russell and SGA.
It's Russell and Towns.
Yeah. I'll give that answer, but
you gave him a different combination than the one given, which is fantastic.
No, that's what was given.
It's Russell or Towns or SGA. Oh, Towns or SGA. There you go. Russell and SGA. Got it.
Yeah, by the way, it could have been the way that you read it because I just can't imagine that he's choosing between SGA and Ware.
Yeah, I can't either. I mean, this is weird. Again, I loved watching Ware. I mean, I brought him up on the last show, 5,500, but that was only predicated on Bam being out. Bam wasn't out, and he still ended up going out and putting his thing down, but he only played 18 minutes. That's very different than 33 minutes against the Clippers. You need something to happen to Bam, and Bam's in. Jimmy Butler's back. I mean, this is just disturbing. Miami's disturbing today.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like Jimmy's kind of relenting and being like, I guess I have to play. I'm sure they realize that he's tanked his trade value and it's kind of hard for him to go anywhere because he don't want to give him up for nothing. But then other teams also don't want to give up something for him at this point. And then I think what also probably really scared the shit out of him was when the Heat filed, I don't know the right terminology, but they filed some sort of complaint to try to double what his fine amount is, which I don't even know how they could do that. Because right now he gets fined for each game he misses 1 game check. They're trying to fine him 2 game checks for each game he missed. He was just like, screw it, I'm coming back.
He's taken 11 shots in his last 52 minutes of court time, and we're talking about him being a coveted trade target. I mean, what are we actually doing out there, Jimmy Buckets? Come on, buddy. This might be something. I mean, he's 8K, so I don't have to think about it today, but I do think there's a world where Pat Riley in that one-on-one said to him, he's like, you want to go somewhere else? Make yourself appealing. Like, make yourself appealing. And we see Jimmy Butler shoot it 24 times today. Like, I think there's a world where that happens. I mean, I was going to fire Tyler Hero because his usage has been, north of 30% without Jimmy Butler on the floor over the last 4 games. But like, I can't do it this time. Like, I just can't, even though Tyler Hero is probably going to play 38 minutes in a competitive spot, 40 minutes. I still don't want to because of Jimmy Butler. I think Jimmy Butler could just go out every time he touches the ball, it's in the air. It could also be he shoots 2 times. There's a large range of outcomes for whatever Jimmy Butler we see tonight.
Talen Horton-Tucker was just ruled out. So that is a piece of news that happened. Not something that should really significantly impact our lineups, but it's something that just ended up happening. I also want to ask you, just because it is so impactful to the slate, Karl-Anthony Towns, best guess, is he going to be in or out?
In. If it were any other team other than Minnesota, I would say out, but in, just because it's Minnesota.
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? It was reported he had a bone chip in his thumb, which I assume is painful. When I first saw that reported, I assumed he was going to be out for a while, and then it was like he's game to game. So I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it, but my best guess is I'm on the same page as you. I think he plays, but I really am not totally confident in that. And Brandon then I saw injuries. Here we go. Injuries starting to happen right now. So my best guess, I'm on the same page as you. I think Cat plays. Not 100% confident in that, but it's nice that we're going to be able to have the flexibility without being heavily exposed to that first game on the slate. But we have got big news that has just happened. Brandon Miller has been ruled out with that wrist injury. He was questionable to play. Immediate reaction to this, LaMelo Ball to the moon.
LaMelo Ball to the moon. Miles Bridges to the moon at 7,300. You're probably going to get something, whether that's, my guess is Josh Green at 3,500 probably ends up being more appealing. I mean, this is the best best spot you can possibly run into in Chicago here on the other side of this one. LaMelo usage has been out of control as is. We did get Butler confirmed starting there for Miami. I can't wait to watch that game. I really can't. I'm going to absolutely hate watch that basketball game, but I definitely think that Bridges, Ball, some type of value. I mean, Cody Martin probably getting the start in the situation, right? Josh Okogie's there now too, for what it's worth.
What'd they do last time?
Josh Okogie's available, I'm assuming. Like, what if they just start a 3K Okogie just to be like, hey, we'll see how he is? They
could. They certainly could. He brings something to the table they need. That's defense. It's like the biggest need on the entire team. It's possible.
I'd be terrified if he started. Like Okogie, 3K. Like, what do you even do with this projection? Like, what do you actually do with Josh Okogie there with the number of other bodies behind there too? Martin Green. It's just something to keep in mind that eventually we're going to see Okogie mix in and maybe, as you said, play a little bit more here. Maybe they do just give him the start rate from the get-go. But my guess is Martin gets the start, but Green might be more appealing to me. It's going to be one we'll obviously be able to react to the news for. Alongside Miles Bridges, I do think Green makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the last game that Brandon Miller sat that LaMelo was in, because there's been so many games this year where they've both been out. Here we go. Last time it happened was...
Yeah, Martin, I think, gets a start too, along with Green.
So December 23rd. December 23rd, there was no Brandon Miller, but we did have LaMelo Ball. And the starting lineup, Eric, it was Cody Martin. They ended up going with LaMelo Ball, Josh Green, Cody Martin, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams. So, yeah, I do think that Cody Martin most likely to start.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way that it plays out in my head. Again, they could decide to do it with Okogie because he just got traded for. This is a team that, for all intents and purposes, is going nowhere. I mean, the East is an absolute just dog shit situation at the bottom there. Now the number 10 team gets in the playoffs the last couple of years. I still think Charlotte's a ways away from that 10, so it's not going to matter. But I think LaMelo Ball, that's going to be the guy who definitely is going to jump out. Even at 10-4, you're just going to play a ton of him more than likely in anything more than one lineup.
And here's a question, too, about pay-up options where, we still got the Cat news to come. We've got the Jokic news. As of right now, who is your favorite spend-up option on the slate considering the Brandon Miller news?
Oh, considering the Brandon Miller news, I mean, I didn't think about that one because I think relative to ownership, right now be Ball. He's going to go up, though. He's at 27%. He's going to look markedly better. I like Giannis with power forward eligibility, power forward center. And then Jokic, I mean, he's sub 12K for the first time in forever. It's not a good spot, but I do think that if you're going to get a sub 12K Jokic at, 15, 20% ownership, that is an absolute smash any day of the week. I'll say this. I think LaMelo's ownership comes up. It'll probably rival that of SGA. There's going to be a push and pull effect between those two. My favorite, I think, next to ownership ends up being Jokic right now. And he's at center, which we have these guards that we're going to parse through. We're going to have SGA and LaMelo on the expensive end. For value, we're going to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley. We're going to get some other things that come along for the ride, but it's probably tied between Giannis and Jokic for me. I had a lot more Giannis coming into this show, and I think the later this goes without knowing what happens with Jokic, the better for us.
How serious do you think his injury is, or do you think this is kind of a Fugazi questionable listing? Because I have a little bit of a theory here.
Then do share.
I think they meant to rest him the other day and forgot to put it on the injury report.
So they had to come up with something absolutely make-believe, like an elbow.
I have no clue. I'm just kind of throwing it out there because they
asked,
like
Caddyshack. Oh, my arm.
They asked Mike Malone about it, about the injury, and he gave a really weird answer. It was like, apparently he hurt his elbow at some point. I didn't know about it.
Coaches are so bad at lying that now they're just lying and just not even trying to hide it. That's how ridiculous it's gotten to a certain extent. Speaking of lying
today, then yeah, it was a real injury. But my gut feeling is that they opted to rest him the other day, and he wasn't on the injury report. And they're like, we have to make it seem like he had an injury for them to avoid being fine. So if he once again, if he sits today, then it was a real injury. But if he ends up playing and nothing looks weird, then I just don't think there's anything to that elbow thing.
So Diabate, he's good to go here today. It looks like somebody just put that into the chat here. Let me double check. I didn't see that news come in.
Yeah,
Either way,
it came with the rest of the.
Oh, it came with the Charlotte stuff.
Yeah,
I think the whole reason that they were fine parting with Nick Richards is they're like, well, Mark Williams is our dude. I just think you run into the same thing. Taj Gibson was playing those minutes. I think Taj Gibson goes by the wayside. I'm doing nothing different. I'm just basically giving Diabate a couple of minutes, Taj Gibson a couple of minutes. You could go 8-8 his first game back, but we saw Taj Gibson play 8 and 7 minutes the last two. Mark Williams is locked into being like a 31, 32 minute a night guy. At 6,800, I don't care as much, but it is Chicago on the other side. I'll see where it comes out in the wash. I don't really have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reason that I just think Nick Richards is a guy who doesn't matter, and they were just stunned anybody was willing to trade anything for him. And they're like, cool, this is not a guy who matters to our future in any kind of way. If you're willing to give us any sort of value for him, we'll cash in on this. We're not going anywhere this year anyway.
The lengths to which the Suns will go to let Yusuf Nurkic know they hate him knows no bounds. They will not relinquish the hate for Yusuf Nurkic ever. Ever, ever, ever.
Doesn't help that he's been dog shit this year.
Sure.
It doesn't help his own case.
Nope.
For sure doesn't. So as far as projections, let me refresh to see if this has been updated. As soon as it is, we'll throw the Hornets projections on screen and let you know where it is that we are leaning towards in terms of value and where LaMelo ends up for his projection. Anything else that you're going to be doing? By the way, some more news. Nothing significant. Io and Kobe White and Josh Gideon.
Thank God.
Anything that you're going to be doing to your lineups to give yourself some extra flexibility? Or is it just kind of like there aren't that many early locking games? We're not prioritizing it. You don't feel like you have to make any kind of real significant adjustments to give yourself flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to get to a share or two of Tatum or Banchero, just because they're the guys most likely to put up raw fantasy points in that first game, go right ahead. Minnesota, New York, we're going to wait on that Karl Anthony Towns news, and that's obviously going to dictate what we do with Brunson, what we do with Josh Hart, what we do with Mikal Bridges, what we do with OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa. They all become semi-viable. It's still a disgusting game environment, and Achiuwa's up to 4,300, whereas he was 3,700 last time out, where you could at least talk yourself into a little bit of value if you wanted it. I don't think I played any, but I definitely see paths to getting onto lots of that game, or basically none of that game aside from the value piece that is Nickeil Alexander-Walker with his positionality. Like even Mike Conley, I don't feel 100% about. Like he's going to start at point guard. He's got a 14.5 PRA going across the entire industry today. Like if Vegas is accurate at 14.5 PRA, we're talking about a guy who just isn't going to project all that well. And you're just basically clicking in for value. And if he doesn't put up 25, Josh talks about target score. And sometimes I don't think people understand the push and pull effect of that. Like the boom bust tool, when it's talking about putting up a certain range of outcomes, like what your boom percentage is, your bust percentage. Like obviously we're worried about upside. And Mike Conley can be.
Oh, buddy. We got another one. He's not going to play. Zach LaVine is questionable now. We see this over and over again this time of season. It's everybody in the NBA. They're all tongue kissing. They're all getting each other the flu. Zach LaVine downgraded to questionable with an illness. He's not going to play. I don't know how many times we've seen a player downgraded because of an illness during this time frame over the course of the season, Eric. All of them have sat out. Maybe eventually one of them is going to end up playing, but time and time again, guys get downgraded to questionable in the middle of live before lock with an illness, and they don't end up playing. So Zach LaVine
just celebrating that we didn't have to deal with this against Charlotte, and now we have to deal with it in like the worst possible way. Oh God. I mean, right off the bat, the most interesting guy is Kobe White, 34, 33 minutes. There's times that they've proven they just don't want to close with Giddey. I mean, he only played 30 minutes against Atlanta. He had a big dud. He can walk into extra minutes whenever you get one of those guys removed. Taylor Horton-Tucker, though, being out now matters a big amount because 3,500 for him. I mean, we're going to get such short up minutes, I think, for all of those core three guys in Giddey, White, Dosunmu. Dosunmu played 25 minutes his first game back in over 3 weeks it was. So we got to keep in mind that Io at 6,100, there's kind of a capped minutes upside to a certain extent. I'm pulling up Popcorn Machine because I do want to see those exact rotations that we had from Atlanta there against Phoenix. So I'm taking a look here, and Io, it would appear probably, no, it wasn't against Phoenix. Where is it at here? Anyway, the whole point is that we're going to get some kind of like, whether it's Buzelis, whether it's Ball, like there's going to be something that looks a lot better than what it did before. And then you have an $8,200 price tag on Vooch. We're talking about the guy with the most usage there on the team, Zach LaVine, and we're kind of distributing that elsewhere. I definitely don't want to sleep on Vooch at 8,200 against Charlotte and Mark Williams. I mean, this is just a team that I was just so happy we didn't have to deal with, and now we have to deal with them even more.
Yeah, I don't know that. Well, there probably is. I'm trying to look through their roster right now and try to find out who's the value piece that could potentially stand out here. Maybe Patrick Williams is just a shitty fantasy producer, but they might have to give him extra minutes. So maybe Patrick Williams could be somebody who projects better here. We know THT is already out. He's somebody who stood out as a value play in the past in some of these scenarios. Buzelis off the bench, somebody who I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being projected for 20-ish fantasy points. He's a reasonably okay fantasy producer. My initial reaction looking at the pricing, though, is that Kobe White is the guy I think I'm going to end up with the most of.
I agree. And people are saying Ball and Ball. Like, that's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome to watch them guard each other and go back and forth. It's probably going to be silly and goofy to a certain extent. They're both kind of, going to be enjoying it and smiling, guarding each other, whatever else. But like, I doubt Lonzo Ball at 4,600 is really the guy that I want to get to all that much of. It's definitely going to be Kobe White. He's been in this situation now for a little bit of like 6,300 against Charlotte. Weren't we paying like $7,000 for him back in November when you had LaVine out? Like, this is definitely a huge upgrade for Kobe White. I mean, it's an upgrade for everybody, if we're being honest, but like, I think Kobe White, definitely the guy number one. I'm unsure on IO minutes. That's the other main thing about this that just makes me really uncomfortable. I think Giddey probably, just because what Chicago gave up. Like, I think a $7,000 Giddey is still going to be very viable. I'm curious to see where the field lands on him. And then 4,600 Ball. I don't think it goes without saying he's going to be playing against his brother there. Just brought that up. But like, we have to think about this from like a salary range of outcome perspective. He still can't play 30 minutes. Like, I'd be shocked if he played 30 minutes. And as such, on this slate, I think that just becomes kind of like comes through in the wash. He's still been the most popular guy all day, I think, on this team. I think it's probably going to get to a place where I'm going to be undercutting it pretty severely.
Yeah, I'm just checking the numbers this year for the Bulls with Levine, and I guess I'll take THT out as well because, why not? Not that it makes a massive difference, but just makes things a little bit more accurate. So for this season, what are some of the fantasy numbers looking like? Doesn't look like Kobe White's been a killer fantasy producer. Sans Zach LaVine, I thought the numbers would be a little bit better for him without him, but right around a fantasy point per minute. But still, I mean, considering his price tag, if he's going to be a fantasy point per minute and play 36 minutes, then you're looking. And then also when you factor in the matchup being positive, you're still going to have upper 30s fantasy points for Kobe White in that situation. Clearly somebody to get to at his price tag.
So don't forget, you got to bring THT off too. But I mean, even still, 337 minutes for Josh Giddey without Zach LaVine on the floor. Guess his fantasy point per minute rate, unless you're looking at it.
I was just pulling it up right now.
I can tell you, it's a big number. 1.31 DraftKings points per minute, Josh Giddey.
Yeah, I mean, he is points per minute. He's the best fantasy producer on the team. The problem is that he doesn't have the same minute security as the other guys because he isn't good. But with that said, they only have so many guys to go to with no THT and no LaVine. I'm going to like Giddey as well. But the reason I prefer Kobe White, at least just eyeballing it before actually seeing our updated projections and rerunning Sims, is because of the fact that Kobe White is cheaper and I think plays more minutes.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be the most. I mean, we have so many mid-range options to go in addition to Ball, Bridges, whomever starts. I mean, Mark Williams is going to. We'll see. I mean, 36 minutes against Utah for Mark Williams in that evisceration game he just had. It's my dog. Don't mind me. I'm very much here for just rotating through these guys. I just can't wait for our ownership run. Our ownership, you're also going to want to stick around for playback now. Big time after the show. I know Narco Cop's going to be covering everything in the UFC for the first half hour. That second half hour, as we start getting those starting lineups leading up to 4 games locking at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, just look at it as a 3-hour show. Deeper dive into live before lock, into playback. I mean, you're going to want to be here for all of it because news is going to change everything. Ownership is going to change constantly in this next hour plus. I mean, I'm going to just be by my computer. I know that for sure.
We do have a projections update for the Charlotte Hornets. And by the way, Zach LaVine officially questionable, not officially ruled out. If anybody's trying to figure out why we are talking about Zach LaVine being out, it's because he's dealing with an illness. We think the most likely scenario is that he's not going to play considering when it was that he was downgraded. But the Charlotte Hornets, who we do have updated with there being no Brandon Miller tonight, here's what we're looking at for this team. LaMelo Ball leading the way. No surprise. Eric got him projected for nearly 57 fantasy points here.
God.
He's looking like the best pay up option on the slate. Miles Bridges looks terrific as well. 40 fantasy points for him at $7,300. Mark Williams at 60. Yeah, go ahead.
Mark Williams, look at that projection. Look at that jump.
Yeah, Mark Williams at nearly 40 fantasy points. Cody Martin at 23, which if he was cheaper, he'd be somebody who'd be playing in a lot. We'll get 2 lineups with Cody Martin at that price tag, but not the same priority to me as what the spend up options are. Nothing looks really great on the cheap end. It's LaMelo, it's Bridges, it's Mark Williams. And then if you and I are also considering that we don't think LaVine is going to play, this is a game that I'm just going to, without even trying to, I'll end up game stacking a lot.
I'm so mad that Grady Dick doesn't have small forward eligibility, so I could go Ball Dick Ball in my guard forward utility like a child.
There we go. Yeah, why even play to win when you could just it's like typing boob into the calculator. 8008. There you go.
Just so mad. Why give him small forward eligibility? God damn it.
Can't be done. You'll have to settle for winning a tournament
here on the Live Before Lock show. At Eric Lindquist, follow me on X.
Yeah, you have to settle for winning a tournament
one day.
If that's your preference, try to play the best guys instead of try to.
The only tournament I won this year, the only tournament that I've won in NBA DFS of over like 5,000 people, I won the $1, 23,000 entries. Won the $1, putting one $1 lineup in just for the achievements like I'm EMAC from the bathroom. That's the only tournament that I've won this year in NBA DFS. On my day off on a Saturday.
All right. No need to brag about your great successes.
Just saying, $2,000. What's up?
Yeah. I can't say I've had the same experience. It's gone pretty well for me. If you guys haven't done it yet, by the way, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, go and check out Portfolio EV because we've got a new 7-day free trial that's now available to any new users. Link is down below in the YouTube description box. And one thing that is really great about Portfolio EV, especially if you are a GPP DFS player, is we've seen a lot of people in the YouTube comments as well as in Discord say they've started to sign up for Portfolio EV and they're using it to buoy their DFS play, where they feel better on a day-to-day basis about the security that Portfolio EV. It won't have quite as many swings as DFS. It's not to say that you're guaranteed to win every night betting using Portfolio EV, but it's not going to have quite the same swings as playing GPPs will in NBA DFS or NFL DFS or anything like that. So a lot of people have gotten in on the action here. And if you're somebody who's been wanting to try it out, what better way to do it than with a 7-day free trial if you're a new user? Link down below in the YouTube description box. It's the same tools that I use for my own bets. I've been using them for my thread as well on Twitter. Nathan's been doing it. I saw Nathan is in the YouTube chat as well. His Portfolio EV content. If you guys aren't following Nathan on Twitter, what is ND_Joyce as what I think Nathan's Twitter handle is?
That would be correct.
Yeah, Nathan's doing similar content to me, and his thread's up even more than mine this year. So go follow Nathan over there as well. And while you're doing all this, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. We just got an update that Jokic is a game time decision. Like I said before, I think he plays today. Is that the way that you're leaning with Jokic as well?
Correct.
And now time to start running some sims for updated information on the Charlotte Hornets. Before I do that, though, I also want to give the audience updated ownership information because that's been run as well. So if you wouldn't mind, Jacob, could you pull the ownership on screen? And let's look at the Hornets. We'll start with DraftKings, and then we'll do it on FanDuel afterwards as well. The two most popular players on the slate now, Eric, on DK. Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball 1, Miles Bridges 2. That's not surprising me at all. LaMelo pulling 50% ownership, Bridges pulling 40% ownership. And then if you scroll down a little bit more there, you'll get Mark Williams at 22% ownership. And then Cody Martin still 15% owned. We like LaMelo and Bridges a whole bunch. Do you have an issue with their ownership projections? Are they too popular for you?
No, not against the Bulls. I mean, the numbers are just eye-popping. I mean, it's so hard when you take a guy like Brandon Miller off the floor, who kind of just holds everybody else back from a maximum upside perspective, and you rip him off the floor, and now you're taking the guy who already was leading this team in usage and already kind of breaking everything for me on my end. His usage, do you know his usage with Brandon Miller off the floor this season?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I do know it's high.
Good luck.
40%.
It is 40.5. See, I led the witness. It is what it is. 40.5% usage would be the highest usage in the NBA by leaps and bounds. And I mean, there's just no scenario where you don't play LaMelo Ball in more than one lineup. And you're probably playing him in that single lineup today. 38% assist rate. I mean, he does everything. He's responsible for like everything that happens on the offensive end when you take Brandon Miller off the floor. You have a pick and roll partner now, too. You have Mark Williams out there. Miles Bridges, 27.7% usage, 16% assist rate, 13.3% total rebound rate. That's nothing to scoff at. 1.15 DraftKings points per minute for him. But Ball is a 1.52 DraftKings points per minute player at around 10K against the Chicago Bulls, who have been at the top or near the top in pace all season long. 104.5 possessions per 48 minutes. It's just kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's somebody who is I'm going to safely guess. I'm 99% sure of this. I'm rerunning the Sims right now. He's going to be my most rostered player.
Did we just get 5 super chats in the course of less than 20 seconds?
We may have, and we're going to start answering those right now. So let's get to all of these super chats here. The first one here. This is annoying. I've got this stupid AI chat summaries covering up the questions here.
Eric is tilting and lamenting balls and dicks.
Corey Shea, top 3 single entry pay-ups and value plays. All right. Well, I mean, if I don't know that I'll be able to fit 3 pay-ups into all my lineups here, but top 3 pay-ups, LaMelo, ball easy one. Easy one, yep. LaMelo, correct?
Ball number 1.
Okay. I'll go Jokic 2.
Jokic 2 right now at current ownership, correct?
Who do you have a third favorite?
SGA, definitely. He basically got 3/4 of annihilation. He's playing on another planet. He's your MVP frontrunner. It's got to be SGA.
Okay. I don't have any issue with that either. And then top 3 favorite value options. This is a little bit tricky just because it's going to be different for sure in an hour.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, we did not. Let me update this because I feel as though Bazelis did not get any love from us. And I thought he would be a guy that with all these other pieces out, I mean, we have him projected for less than 10 fantasy points. I mean, is there any value that showed up from Chicago? Because it feels like the answer is no. Jalen Smith.
Well, keep in mind, Levine isn't out. He's questionable.
Right, but we have Levine at... Oh, yeah, there you go. That makes sense. All right, I was just curious because I thought I was going to get like to tons of Bazelis when I ran the Sims again here, and I didn't get any. So I'm just going to kind of tweak that here. I'm going to take Levine out. I do think Bazelis is in play big time now. I mean, we would have saw THT in this rotation, and thank God we don't have to deal with that idiot. I know he went to Iowa State, and most people went to Iowa State are just glorified studs and beautiful people. Shout out David Montgomery this weekend. Shout out to myself, but I am very much nervous. I'd be very nervous about a THT situation today. With him out, Torrey Craig out, I'm going to put Chris Duarte in for a couple of minutes, and Bazelis is the guy that they actually want to play. He's the rookie that they actually want to throw out there. Dalen Terry probably got to sliver off some minutes for him too. But I'm just kind of like looking through this rotation. Patrick Williams can get up to like, what, he played 34 minutes against Sacramento. The last 2 games have been weird game scripts, and he didn't play all that many minutes, 20 and 25 there, but I mean, there's got to be something to carve out there. And I think Bazelis at 3,100, not the best fantasy producer so far, but like, I think he's going to be viable at 3,100.
Very rare that I hear somebody shout out themselves. Eric just shouting himself out. Like, I've never seen an athlete wins the Super Bowl or whatever. They go on, they thank their friends, their family. They shout out Jesus. I've never heard somebody be like, yo, shout out to me. I put the work in. But look at Eric. He's giving himself the credit, and not even for doing anything, just for going to college and passing with what I assume was like a B GPA.
And God is with you. Nobody is against you, I must say. So go me.
Did I guess your GPA correct?
What?
I'm going to say a 2.9. 2.95. 2.96.
You're not going to go with a 3 in front of it? You're going to be that guy? I was on the Dean's list, homie.
All right. Shout out to Eric per himself.
James Stewart would suck himself off if he could. I'm glad that got blocked out from YouTube. Way to go, YouTube. Keep up the good work.
Any other value plays? So it's also kind of hard, Corey's question, because the best value plays, it's like Miles Bridges to me now, who's not actually a value play in terms of the way he's asking the question. I know he means the cheap guys, but like for me, it's Kobe White. Bazelis is going to be one of them. He's going to show up in lineups for me after I rerun everything, because I'm also going to be zeroing out Zach LaVine and redistributing those minutes. Who else for cheap really stands out on this slate, Eric?
For way cheap, Mike Conley. We've got to have that conversation. I mean, how popular do you think Mike? Like, I'm happy this is an early game. I'm also very, very, very petrified that this is the early game, because like there's so many ways that he ends up way more popular just because he's like that one value piece that just shows up in lineups and makes you feel a little bit better. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I would say 3,300 just because of the positionality, shooting guard, small forward. Minnesota really doesn't like to go further down the bench. I've seen people bring up Rob Dillingham. I've seen people, we've had Shannon Jr. out for a while. I thought maybe this would be a chance to maybe dust him off. Now it doesn't even make sense to. If you wanted to try to make anything else on Minnesota, I think Josh Minot would be it. But like, I'm quite certain that we just see more and more and more minutes going in towards Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And with the positionality, he's really hard to get away from.
Kyrie Irving will play today. He was questionable,
Okay.
so we got Kyrie confirmed, and that's good. I didn't really want to deal with the Mavericks and whatever they were going to decide to end up doing. Aaron Gordon also, he's been confirmed available, so got a couple of updates there. And running my lineups, which I assume this is going to be the final time that I have to update them and run them prior to lock, unless something crazy breaks in the final 10 minutes here. I agree with you, though. Also, Mike Conley, just considering the information we have now, it's definitely something that could end up changing. But as of right now, the best value plays Mike Conley. There's no Dante DiVincenzo. He's starting. And then it's not just that Conley's starting. This is a team in the Timberwolves that does not have a lot of depth this year. And without there being a guy like DiVincenzo behind Conley to back him up, we might actually see 30 minutes from Mike Conley. And if that's the case, at his price tag, I think he's looking pretty solid for the slate. Shout out to Chris Williams for gifting us 5 YouTube memberships. As always, Chris, thank you for supporting the channel. Chris also, somebody who's regularly joining us over in Playback, where I'll be with Josh as well as Narco Cop in 10 minutes. We're watching some NBA, talking about the UFC slate tomorrow and some of Narco's favorite UFC bets. So come check us out over there in 10 minutes. 1-2 says, Lonzo about to swerve, bend that corner. Whoa. Lonzo Ball, somebody you think you're going to be playing a decent amount of?
Crank that soul. Hey, what? Crank that soul. Hey, what? Yeah. Lonzo's fine. I'm not going to be jamming him the way it sounds like you're going to be jamming man, but I think he's viable. I definitely think he's viable. Keep going with the super chats. We have so many.
Next one is from Abby Schreier. Tice or Arubans over on FanDuel? I'm going to say Tice. I think he starts with Misi out. If Tice doesn't start, then he's dead.
Yeah, Jeremiah and Robinson are all, he's live-ish to potentially be that other guy next to Zion, but no matter what, Daniel Tice is 3,100 on DK. Are we actually thinking about that? Are we thinking about that today?
It depends if he starts and what other value is available by the time we get there. If things were to stay as they are now, then... And this, by the way, by staying as they are now, that would also mean Levine not ending up getting actually ruled out, as you and I are assuming. Then, yes, Tice would be a consideration for me. But it's like there's so many guys like this who it's like, oh, hey, Tice, he looks viable right now, right? But then we actually get to breaking down the slate, and other players get ruled out and we're late swapping and stuff, and then he kind of falls by the wayside.
100%. Keep rolling.
I got 10% of him at the moment, though. Sean Jeezy, how do you guys handle situations like Mark Williams, where he's clearly shouldering a different role now, but projections are slow to reflect that? I mean, we've got him projected for nearly 40 fantasy points today. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. So it's not that you're looking at a 1-game sample and saying that he's just completely different. The thing that happened before is he could only play like 17 minutes, 19 minutes. He was playing the same damn role. He's still Mark Williams. But if you look at it, he's played 15 games this season. He averages 21 and a half minutes per game. The thing that's changed in his role is he can play 36 minutes now. Like we can project him for more because he can play more minutes. Like that's what it comes down to. And obviously Nick Richards not being behind him is interesting. Like I don't think it actually changes that much because I think whether it's Gibson, Diabate doesn't really matter to me. I think Solon, probably somebody who can also get dusted off from time to time. He went from playing 6 minutes on the 12th when Richards was there to playing 14 minutes on the 15th. So, I mean, there are ways that it just kind of gets, mixed and matched as far as like that front court. But there's no doubt Mark Williams, 6,800. I mean, the reason his projection is different is his minutes are different, not his role.
Yeah, it's, you could... I understand where Sean's coming from. I just think the current projection on him is fair.
Okay. People want Nuke of the Night somehow, some way. We have 7 minutes. If we're going to do it now. If not, we'll just not do it.
Yeah. Don't run the animation or anything, Jacob. We'll just do it really quick so we get it out. I have my lineups updated. And yeah, well, remember, we got the new one. So we got to get the eye patch on and everything. So for me, Nuke of the Night, it is Kobe White.
I mean, that way to get contrarian, bro.
He's projected for 10% ownership right now.
Is he really?
Yes.
What?
Zach LaVine is questionable, Eric. He's not out.
Oh, daddy. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Yikes. You know what? Because he just got done setting everybody's lineups on fire yesterday and people wanted to tilt their faces off, I'm just going to say Jalen Williams at 3,800 just because it's fun. Like, I like watching people squirm. That game was not remotely competitive. He was in foul trouble there in that third quarter. He didn't play very well either, but Jalen Williams, I think there's a definite ceiling in there. There's a ceiling in there for a lot of those backup OKC guys, but like he's starting, gets first crack, and there's Daniel Gafford out there. If Gafford gets any kind of success early, I think you're walking into 28, 30 minutes and nobody is going to play him coming off of yesterday.
Sharon left us a super chat wanting us to run FanDuel Sim. So if you have that, Jacob, if you wouldn't mind, just run this for FanDuel, which he's got right there, and some of the top favored lineups. So shout out to Jacob for that. Pierre wants to know any priorities for the last 2 games on FanDuel. I wouldn't say not priorities. Overall, favorite player is going to be Wemby for me. We're going to have value that's going to make it viable to be able to get up to him. But that's not where the best value is on the slate. You know, things could always change based on who gets ruled out for the Nets. But I don't think there's any priorities in the final 2 games of the slate on FanDuel. Connor, DK cash game locks, fade Wendell Carter Jr. and wait for news. I think it's still viable to play Wendell Carter Jr. in cash. I wouldn't call him a cash game lock, though. Players that I definitely want to be playing in cash games as of right now: LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, SGA, Mike Conley. I'd say those 4.
Connor, we're not ignoring you. There's just so many super chats that came in at once. That's really what it comes down to. He asked Wendell Carter Jr., fade Wendell Carter Jr. in cash and wait for news. And then he asked DK cash locks, which we just answered already. But Wendell Carter Jr., not a must in cash. In fact, I would actually argue you should skip that first window of games with him if you really wanted to and just react to news. He looks really good, though. If he was the only piece you played for cash, I'd be okay with it.
We've got a super chat here from Michael Serwa. Wants to know best spend up and value option per position over on FanDuel. Okay, so best spend up and value option per position. All right, so starting at point guard, that is going to be LaMelo as the pay up option.
Yep.
Value guy for cheap, Mike Conley. Yep. At shooting guard, pay up option. There aren't really any shooting guard pay up options I love on FanDuel. So I'll just say for cheap, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. At small forward, favorite overall spend up option, Miles Bridges. Favorite pay down option, Cody Martin. At power forward, favorite spend up option is Wemby. Favorite value option is Filipkowski. At center, favorite pay up option is Wemby, and favorite value option, Drew Eubanks. We've got Dexter Mackey says, thank you for your consistent entertainment and knowledge on the show and patience online. Yes, a shout out to Dexter. Recently signed up and has been somebody who has been a long-time DMer for me on Twitter. I like Dexter. Chris Albers, any Gafford or Jalen Williams love? I like neither of them are guys who are in like a massive amount of lineups for me, but I have 20% of Gafford right now, and I have 10% of Jalen with a Y Williams.
Yeah, man, I like Jalen with a Y quite a bit. 3,800 coming off of yesterday. Also, that Carlson fellow out of Utah played kind of well. Gafford is fun. He went up against Messi and just made him his little B, but not at 5,500 like a massive priority because they can go to Maxi Kleber at the drop of a hat if OKC goes small, and they will play him a lot more than the 14 minutes we saw against the Pelicans.
And hey, we got to all the super chats. All right, so let's go into Discord and see what questions in here we could answer really quickly. And also, guys, don't forget, if you want to sign up for a Stokastic package, we got our link join offer. You could sign up for any of our affiliate partners down low in the YouTube description box. And for each one you sign up for, 1 free month of core access. Let's see what we have here. Braden, a.k.a. Russell, who's a play you could take a chance with on late swap, who could take a chance in on a slate with no late swap? Kobe White. Kobe White. Kobe White is somebody for me there. Larson, 407. Wow, is Wendell Carter Jr. just a DK versus FanDuel play? Yeah, he's more DK specific. Wendell Carter Jr. Rabashua, the only logical, profitable thing for Butler to do is ball out and show the other teams he's still got it.
Yep.
I don't know. How do you apply any logic to Jimmy Butler's situation?
None. Zero. He's a psycho.
And Grizzly, are we totally punting on the first game? No, I've got... Let's see. What do I have of Wendell Carter Jr.? I have 24% Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah.
And then we've got Kevin Cash App wants to know, what Utah pieces are we prioritizing in single entry? I don't know that I prioritize any of them in single entry, but my overall favorite ones, Bryce Sensabaugh, Drew Eubanks. Sensabaugh appears to shoot the ball every time he touches it.
Every time. He comes off the bench, and he is literally the new Jordan Clarkson. That's what he does.
But like even more extreme, I'm watching the game the other day. It was very annoying. I had under 18.5 points for Bryce Sensabaugh.
Yep.
He's at 16 with like 2 minutes left in the game, and he just chucks up a 3 and it goes in. So that was an annoying way to lose that. But I mean, he played like 23 or 24 minutes and took 19 shots or something. He missed most of them, but he just kept shooting.
So my mornings are generally go to the gym, 6 a.m., 6:30, 6:45 whenever I get home after that. Karl Anthony Towns out. Fuck, whatever. Goodbye. Whatever.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. You guys like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Come join us over in Playback. We are going to have Josh and myself break down the Karl Anthony Towns news, and then we're also going to talk some MMA with Narco Cop. So come join us over in Playback, guys. If you could do us a favor, by the way, Jericho Sims starting again. If you could, Jacob, could you drop that link into the YouTube chat so people know to come and click on that link? Let's see. Playback.
I do have,
Here's the
whatever.
This show ends with Erica Greaves, I don't know, 90% of the time, something like that.
Yeah, because I have to do shows with you.
That's going to do it for us today. Thank you very much for watching. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Come join Josh, myself, Narco Cop over in Playback. Have a great night, everybody.